Hello and welcome everyone to this exciting pre-election candidates forum for what is, can I say, one of the most breathtaking parts of the country that you're all very lucky to be part of, and I'm sure you all know that. Covering two very important, can I say, federal electorates on the cusp of a federal election. I was in the Parliament just yesterday, as were some of the people who will join us on stage, and it did have the sense that that Parliament wasn't going to return. So I have a feeling this might just be very much well-timed. Now, I'm your host, Patricia Karvelas. For those who don't know me, I'm a broadcaster at the ABC, but I do lots of other things too. And I'd like to acknowledge and pay respects to the Bunurong people, the traditional custodians of the land and the waters where we're meeting today. And I'm really looking forward to having a probing conversation with the candidates for these really important seats. I also want to welcome all our distinguished guests here. I know many of you have been excited about this forum, and I think it's really important part of the democratic process to drill down into the local candidates and ask them questions when so much of our elections are focused on the leaders, but to hear from the local candidates about what they have to offer. Before we begin, I want to welcome to the stage the committee chair and CEO, Shannon Smith, and Josh Sinclair. Welcome.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for being here today at the Committee for Frankston and Mornington Peninsula's Federal Candidates Forum for 2025. My name is Josh Sinclair, and I'm the CEO of the committee, and I'm joined by our chair, Shannon Smith. We're delighted to be joined today by so many of our committee members, local representatives, and leaders from business, tourism, health, and education. Patricia mentioned we've got a lot of distinguished guests in the room. Can I acknowledge the federal member for Dunkley, Jodie Bellier, the federal member for Flinders, Zoe McKenzie, Victorian Senator Jess Walsh, Parliamentary Secretary to the Treasurer and member for Frankston, Paul Edbrook, the member for Eastern Victoria, Tom McIntosh, Mayor of Mornington Peninsula Shire, Anthony Marsh, and CEO Bulent Oz, Frankston City CEO Phil Cantillon, Mornington Peninsula Shire councillors, Deputy Mayor Paul Pinjaro, Kate Roper, Max Patton and Michael Stevens, and Frankston City Councillors Nathan Butler, Sue Baker, Cherie Wannett and Emily Green. I also acknowledge the interest in today's event, and we've had a lot of apologies from people who wish they could have made it today. We've received apologies from the Minister for Planning, a member for Carrum, Sonia Kilkenny, the Deputy Leader of the Victorian Liberal Party, member for Nepean, Sam Groth, the member for Mornington, Chris Cruther, member for Hastings, Paul Mercurio, member for Eastern Victoria, Renee Heath, and Frankston City Mayor Chris Bolam and Deputy Mayor Steffi Conroy, and Mornington Peninsula Shire Councillor Stephen Batty.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Shannon Smith, and I'm proud to serve as the chair for the Committee of Frankston and Mornington Peninsula. I've had the privilege of holding this role for over the past 5 years, and I was one of the founding board members when the committee was first established. The Committee for Frankston and Mornington Peninsula is an independent, member-based organisation dedicated to leading and influencing long-term outcomes for our region. We work beyond partisan politics to advocate for significant state and federal government funding, policy attention and investment, ensuring a thriving and sustainable future of our community. For me, being part of the committee is deeply personal. I was fortunate to grow up right here on the peninsula in Red Hill, where I attended local schools before building my career and business in this region. Now, as a parent of an 18-year-old and 20-year-old, I want to ensure that my children and future generations have the same opportunities to live, work and raise their families in a place as incredible as this. The passion for our community is what drove me to be involved from the very beginning. I want to contribute to initiatives that enhance the livelihoods, livability and sustainability of this region that we are so lucky to call home. One of the key ways we can create impact is by facilitating events like today's Federal Candidates Forum. These forums are crucial in bringing together the community leaders, businesses and policy makers to discuss the future of Frankston and the Mornington Peninsula. As Chair, I'd also like you to acknowledge the committee's board members who are here with us today. If you could raise your hand as I call your name, that would be great. Chris Proctor, Jackie Prosser, Jade Phelan, Jeremy Keating, Rod Everton, Pippa Hansen, Trudy Paul, and Peter Beale. Unfortunately, Matt McDonald couldn't be here today, but he does send his apologies. Finally, I also want to express our gratitude to our community partners and corporate gold members. Your support allows us to continue our important work and make events like this possible. A big thank you to Australian Unity, Bayport, BlueScope, Esso, Frankston RSL, Gazola Farms, McPherson Kelly, Melbourne Racing Club, Peninsula Hot Springs, Ritchie's, Sea Road Ferries, The National, Chisholm Institute, Frankston City Council, Monash University, Melbourne Peninsula Shire Council, Peninsula Health, Port of Hastings, and South East Water. With that, I'd like to hand you back to Josh.
Thank you, Shannon. I did just want to mention as well, both councils are in the room today, as you would have heard, and look forward to working with both of them, the Mayor of Mornington and Peninsula Shire and Mayor of Frankston, on their advocacy in the lead up to this year's federal election. There's a lot of shared priorities that we'll go into somewhat today, but over the next few weeks as well, as the election is called. The list of members you've just heard is continuing to grow, and we're really thankful for all your support. Of course, we're also delighted to have our major candidates for the electorates of Dunkley and Flinders in the room today. Jodie Bellier and Nathan Conroy for Dunkley, and Zoe McKenzie, Sarah Race and Ben Smith. Putting yourself forward for an election is a really big thing to do. And I commend all candidates for the work they've already put into their early campaigns and for being here this morning. Today, we're in the very capable hands of Patricia Karvelas. Patricia is the presenter of ABC's flagship program Q&A, RN Breakfast, and co-host of the Party Room podcast. Previously, she was the presenter of RN Drive and has been a prominent senior journalist in the Australian media for more than 20 years, beginning her professional career at the ABC and SBS as producer and presenter. Today's forum is also being broadcast by RPPFM, local Peninsula Community Radio, via their online stream for the rest of the community. I'd like to thank the station for their support and ongoing interest in the committee's work and today's forum. Today, we want to hear from you directly to ask questions of our federal candidates for Dunkley and Flinders. On your tables, you will find a flyer with an outline of today's proceedings and a QR code. To ask a question, simply scan the QR code on your phone. I'm sure we all know how to do that, and follow the prompts. This will ensure we can get through as many questions as possible and not interrupt the flow of proceedings. Questions submitted will then help to prompt the conversation from Patricia going forward. And so if you can pop as many questions as you can in, I think you can like and upvote them as well. The ones that appear at the top will most likely be asked. So please do ask a question. So without any further ado, I'll hand it back over to Patricia and we can get the conversation started. Thank you.
Thank you to both of you for that excellent introduction. I'll let you leave the stage. And I thought one of the points you made there was really a very important one, actually, about putting yourself out there when you run in an election. Politicians or people who aspire to be politicians are under immense pressure and often receive a lot of vitriol from the public. Not all members of the public, but some members of the public. But it's actually a very difficult thing, and without people putting themselves out there, we don't have a democracy. So, yeah, thank you. Whoever clapped, it's actually very true. I often think, imagine that kind of scrutiny and every day. It's incredibly intense, and what makes me very worried sometimes that it may put people off. But yet, let's invite to the stage the candidates for the seat of Dunkley to come up to the stage for a sit-down conversation. Welcome first. You can both come up, and there you are, I think. Yeah, there you are, Nathan. Jodie Bellier is, of course, the member for Labor, the sitting member for Dunkley. And Nathan Conroy is the Liberal candidate for Dunkley. Welcome to both of you. I'll get the mic set up there. Now, of course, we've seen both of them compete in a by-election, so I feel like we've kind of seen them both out on the hustings not that long ago. So that means they're well practiced. But this is a conversation rather than a debate, so we want to make sure that, we have a respectful exchange, but at the same time, it's politics, so it's competitive, and we welcome that. Before we get to the questions, and we have many questions for you, and as we invited you, to ask some questions on Slido. I want to ask a broad question and invite you to spend just a couple of minutes, not too long. We want to get to the questions, to introduce yourselves and articulate the most important issues that you see in this electorate for you. Starting with you, Jodie.
Thanks, Patricia, and thank you all for coming to this incredible event.
We'll get you a microphone so we can definitely hear you.
I think that's a bit better.
That's. Although you did an excellent job of projecting.
Right. So thanks to the Committee for Frankston Mornington Peninsula for putting this event on, and for you being here, Patricia. Who am I? I've lived and worked across this community of Dunkley for 30 years. And I've got a background in the community sector, but I've also delivered and run my own businesses, starting with a consulting organisation and also then going on to found the Women's Spirit Project. So I'm passionate about Dunkley, this community, the community by the bay and the people that are part of it. It is a thriving community, and I've had many opportunities because of the people I've met. But there's more for us to do, and part of it is ensuring that we have the infrastructure and the organisations and businesses in this community to be able to be a thriving place for people to live, work and raise a family, and study, of course, as well.
Thank you very much, Jodie. My name is Nathan Conroy. I'm a father with a mortgage, and I am Frankston tough. So that's my new slogan going into 2025.
Nice. I've heard that before.
Yes, it was good. Again, my name is Nathan Conroy. I was the mayor for Frankston City for the last 3 years. Ran in the by-election against this wonderful lady in March last year. Got a bit of a swing towards me. Not the swing that I would have hoped, Jodie, but hopefully, obviously, this time I will. There's so many issues to talk about. We have no crisis accommodation. We have no housing getting built. I was at a local business recently, Frankston Sand and Soil, and with Russell. We talked about it. They're at 20% of what they were just 12 months ago. There was no housing getting built. And at the same time, you allow in 1.5 million people into the country when there's a housing crisis. You know, Nepean Highway is at the worst condition it's been in 30 years. There is infrastructure, Baxter Rail, whatever it is, we need to get on and do it. If you compare Frankston and Mornington Peninsula compared to Geelong and the Peninsula, it's $10 to the one that we get. I know some may disagree with that, but we're getting 10%, and it's time that we put Frankston and Mornington Peninsula on the map and fight for the money that we deserve.
Okay, so that takes me exactly to where I want to go, which is the infrastructure part of the story. Is it your view too, Jodie, that this part of the country does receive significantly less than Geelong?
So I know that over the last few years, we've had $220 million invested into the community of Dunkley, which is a significant amount of money. And you will see in the skyline a range of large building and infrastructure projects. We've got the Jubilee Park, which is a world-class stadium that federal, state and local government have built. We've also got the soon-to-be-built Frankston District Basketball Association, which Wayne over here is the CEO of. And we've got a range of other projects. We've got 2 community car parks that have just finished, and we've got other initiatives that we're building, like we've got the First Nations Health on Nepean Highway, the first of its kind in the state. We've been investing in this community significantly for the last 3 years, alongside a strong partnership with the state government. We've got the incredible Frankston Hospital that you can see, and we've got Chisholm TAFE. So we're setting up this community for the soon-to-be signed off FMAC, and that is something that I support. We've got a thriving community that needs the infrastructure, which I will continue to advocate for. In Parliament this last 2 weeks, I've been a nag, as you would say, with speaking to ministers and talking to them about the needs of this community and the investment we need to keep thriving.
So do you think, Jodie, that there has been an underinvestment and that there needs to be more critical investment in this particular electorate?
Well, clearly there's an article in The Age that you're probably referencing at the moment, and I understand that article. I've been in this role for 11 months, taking over from the remarkable Peter Murphy. And since being in this role, I have continued to support the FMAC and will be doing everything in my power to advocate to my colleagues, the ones in Cabinet, about what we need in this community. And I've already been doing this.
To be honest, it's very hard to not debate right now, and I'm going to
Well,
try.
it's called a conversation, but you can certainly put your
Yes.
case.
So, Jody did mention that there was $220 million invested. There's been $225 million whipped away from the Labour government for the Baxter Rail. So straight away, we are down money. If you look at
That's,
Jubilee,
you mean by the state government, yeah?
no. It
You mean
was
federally?
federal Labour under Jody and Anthony Albanese. They took $225 million from the rail extension to Baxter. They just whipped it. No extra funding went into our area. At the last by-election, we support it. It's a key advocacy for the committee. We put $900 million into that. A few months later, they took out $225 million from our community. If you look at the commuter car parks at Cannock and Frankston, it was the Liberal Party, when we were last in government, funded that. You look at Ballada Road, we funded that, along with the state. If you look at Chisholm, yes, Chisholm is fantastic and Free TAFE is fantastic, but it's also killing small businesses like Neat Training, who is a major employer in Frankston City. So when they say there needs to be more done, there is a lot, and we only can do it genuinely with a change of government, both at state and federal.
I'll give you a right of reply.
With regards to Baxter Rail, a contentious topic that everyone's very aware of, when our government came into power, a review of the budget for that revealed a $1.9 billion requirement for that to be built, and it was deemed economically not viable. The issue that we have in this community that we've been working to address as a government for the last 3 years is housing. We had an incredible forum last year that Josh and the Committee for Frankston Mornington Peninsula put on, and we had Simon Kustenmacher attend that forum. And that forum, the hottest issue for Frankston, Dunkley, Flinders and the Mornington Peninsula is housing. We do not have enough housing in this region, and we've invested as a Labor federal government $32 billion into housing in this country because there is a crisis the opposition did nothing about in their 10 years in power. So we've invested in housing. We've got housing for women and families that are leaving domestic and family violence. We've recently had an announcement down for the women's shelter on the Mornington Peninsula. I'm working with some other housing organisations to get more housing. And we've got another project in Beach Street in Frankston that the state government, with support from the federal government, have been working to deliver. So housing is the key issue. We won't have businesses and we won't have manufacturing if we do not have people and homes and dwellings for people to live in.
Okay, housing is actually where I wanted to go to next, Nathan. What can you, as a federal member, do in this space that's meaningful to put affordable housing on the map in this specific region?
Yeah. Look, when I was mayor, we created the FMAC structure plan, which Jody Bellion during the by-election stood on the foreshore saying that she did not want 20-story buildings. We want to revitalise the city. You had a member for Frankston also with a big petition. They did not want it. It is the future of Frankston City, how we're going to revitalise it. We need a plan. When there's 1.5 million people coming in the middle of a housing crisis, right? Putting more strain and demand on our housing.
There has been a reduction in the immigration levels since then.
My forum. And then the second thing is you have a housing crisis, and the solution to a housing crisis is to tax people to oblivion. That to me is counterintuitive to actually building houses. That's my opinion.
So just on my standing there on the Cannock Creek, one of the things that I'm really committed to through the FMAC is ensuring that we have responsible development. And so I'm very aware that the current FMAC that's about to be signed off by the state government has a 16-storey cap, which I support. So I support that we need more housing. But
did you oppose it, like Nathan says?
20-storey. I opposed the development of the Cannock Creek. And I think one of the things that I am very aware of as a mum, who's also got step-grandchildren, is climate change. We have sea level rising as a key issue along and around the bay, and there has been no discussion about the implications of that on the building along the Cannonall Creek. And so for me, it's about responsible development. Of course, we want the FMAC. I'm supportive of that. But we also need to be very responsible in the building and construction, particularly along, the beach and foreshore areas.
Okay, I was going to go to FMAC, and we'll begin with you if we can. The plan that you both referenced obviously is a very big deal, provides developers with that framework to work on the CBD. Specifically, what do you plan to, even if I know the committee would love an announcement here, I don't know if you have one up your sleeves, no authorisation for that. they both, there's a bipartisan no, our leaders have not said we can announce anything today. But what more can you tell people in this room about your commitment to that plan?
Okay. I spent 4 years working on the FMAC structure plan, and because we have some people who are passionate in the opposite NIMBYs, they're called, I think. And going back to what Jodie was saying, was the plan hasn't changed since the by-election. So she didn't agree with it 12 months ago. It hasn't changed. Now she does agree with it. Again, that's just politics. But what I will say is Cannonall Creek and Nepean Highway are at the worst conditions they have been in 30 years. You have businesses closing down, buildings becoming derelict. That plan gives developers and businesses and our community certainty when they invest in Frankston City. You already can see it. People are moving in, investing in Moondog, Cozy and Tasty, you name it, right now because of it. Harbour was the fastest selling apartment complex in Australia. 0 people from Mount Eliza bought into Harbour. The new one, or Horizon. Harbour, which is opposite Quest, 30% of people are from Mount Eliza. They can see the future is that independent living. We need more housing. So when someone from Mount Eliza, Frankston South move into an apartment, it frees up that house for somebody else. And the idea that we're going to build 15 stories of one social house or affordable house, it's just, for me, not appropriate. Having one demographic in one building, it's just not a thing. But what we do need to look at, and we will work with the state, whoever the state is, to have a percentage of every single building possibly affordable housing. So you spread that demand all over Victoria rather than having huge concrete blocks full of people in social or affordable housing. It just doesn't work. We've seen it in Richmond and Flemington. It just does not work. So for me, it is investing in Cannonall, following through on that plan of FMAC and getting developers and businesses in. I do support the revitalisation of Nepean Highway, even though I don't have an announcement now. And the other thing that was announced...
Are you working on it?
Of course I'm working on it. It was our council who created the master plan for it. It is a thing that has taken 4 years to get over the line with a lot of backlash, but now people can really see and believe in the vision. And we're starting, the council over the last 4 years have started putting the words into actions, and people can see it now and they're believing in it.
Jodie, I'll give you a right of reply, particularly in the housing and the way that you think it should be distributed.
So we've got a very diverse demographic in the community of Dunkley. We've got very low socio-demographic with lots of single families and single parents. So we need a diversity of housing. We talk about building the FMAC, which I'm supportive of. We need more business within the city centre, but we're going to need people to work in those jobs. And if we don't have housing for the lower, more affordable housing end of the market, then we're not going to have the people to fill the jobs that we need to have a thriving hub. So we need, beautiful buildings like the Harbour building. It's a stunning, piece of a landmark that is an ode to what this community can be. But equally, we need like the Beach Street development and other developments that are on the board in order to be able to have the population that we need to create a thriving community and service the jobs. Childcare educators. We've got aged care services that we need workers for, and different retail businesses.
The other big issue here is, of course, accessibility to public transport. And I am going to get to some of your Slido questions, don't you worry. And this has already come up. So this has been a big question there. So obviously, we're all on the same wavelength. Access to public transport remains, I think, an ongoing frustration for people in the region. It is largely, of course, a state issue, but we all know that the federal government has a pretty significant hand in being able to play a role here. So what improvements will you be looking to make or argue for in terms of public transport?
I would be looking to, and am already looking to, ensure that the roads and the infrastructure that get people moving are looked into. There's no announcement coming from me in terms of the Baxter rail. I'll be clear about that. We've got the commuter car parks that mean that people can come into the city centre. The fact that we've got this FMAC redevelopment means that we're going to have more connectivity and more people able to live and work in a more centralised location. We've had the level crossing removal projects that have gone all the way down the train line. So we're making transport more efficient.
Nathan?
Well, I'll be fighting for the duplication to Langwarrin. It was an announcement of $900 million last year. I'll be pushing and fighting for that. When we talk about that public transport is not federal, it actually is, because every major project that the state does, there is a contribution. There is a contribution from
largely
federal.
Controlled though by the state government, right? So it takes that partnership.
For sure, and that's one of the biggest things. It is in Frankston City Council's transport strategy. They advocate for it. We know that when our population doubles in the next 30, 40 years, it's the only way we're going to do is go out into the areas like Langwarrin. We could build 2,000 car parks, which frees up the car parks in Frankston and Kananook. It's the only way we can do it. And if you're serious about housing, we have to invest in our public transport, and that leads from federal down.
What is the number one issue that gets raised with you in your community?
Cost of living. So cost of living is the thing. I've door knocked 5,000 doors, and I'm on the phones every week talking to people. And cost of living is the issue that people are talking about. And I would say the Albanese Labor government have been relentless in pursuit of cost of living measures while they've been in. I've got a shopping list of things that we're doing and need to keep focusing on. We've got, everyone had a tax cut around the by-election or just after the by-election. We've got free TAFE. We've had 600,000 people take up free TAFE. And we've got cheaper childcare, cheaper medicines. We've got an urgent care clinic. So we've been reducing the cost of living while keeping inflation down. Employment, in fact, is at the highest it's ever been in 50 years, and unemployment the lowest. So that's a Labor government that's achieved those outcomes in this 3-year term, which the previous government, when we came into power, inflation had a 6 in front of it. At this current moment in time, it's got a 2. So that has been a tenacious effort by every person, every MP and senator, to make sure that we've got cost of living measures. We know that it's not enough, and we know there's more to do. But I'd just like to say, the opposition left us in a bit of a mess, and we've been recovering. I was in the chamber yesterday, and at 1:25, we passed the announcement for 3 days universal childcare. Now, that is an exceptional other cost of living measure, and the opposition opposed it. So I don't actually believe the opposition are actually really interested in cost of living measures, because we've seen nothing from them and opposition at every turn this last 12 months that I've been in.
Nathan, what's the number one issue that's raised with you?
I think cost of living as well.
So you both agree it's interesting. It's the number one?
100%. And the state Labor government is going to do well for us federally. When you've roads at the worst condition they have been, again, in many, many years, you have medium strips that you can't even see over your car bonnet because they're almost coming in your window. When you have cost of living, they say cheaper childcare. Since 2022, childcare has gone up 22%. when they promised a $275 reduction, that big fur fee of electricity bills, it's up $1,000. Your insurance is up, your premium's up, every single thing is up. And then what does the state government do? We're going to add land tax. We're going to add vacant land tax. They're stifling the economy. They're stifling businesses. And we recently released a fringe tax benefit cut for basically entertainment and hospitality. And Labour to say, it's your boss drinking caviar and lobster. That's another fur fee. Do you know who benefits from that? The baristas and the chefs, the cleaners and the waiters, the farmers, the meat processors, the delivery drivers. That's who benefits from it. And I know many people in this room today, and when I speak to them in Dunkley, they're literally surviving. They're holding their head above the counter because any other tax or cost of living increase at all is going to be detrimental to them. And the recent increase to and now pint is $15. You're just one thing after another, and people are desperate. You can see it in my voice. People are desperate, and they go on about urgent care. You go to Frankston emergency room right now, it is busier than it's ever been, even though they have emergency urgent care clinic. You know, they say one thing, but they do complete opposite.
Yeah, so that issue around cost of living, this is a huge issue across the country, not just in this electorate, as we know, but it's more acute in some places, of course. I think, there's a lot of mortgage stress going on. Next week, we could see an interest rate cut. Are you optimistic about the future?
We live in the greatest country in the world. I'm always optimistic that we're coming out of this, and in 2 months' time, we'll have a new Liberal government, so we're all sorted there. But one thing I will say is, people think it's just low-income earners that are struggling. People in Mount Elias are selling their houses that maybe were $2 or $3 million at 20% discount now. So it's a buyer's market, by the way. But those sellers believed in the economy. They might be doctors who went to college for 10, 12 years, who believed in the vision, and they're getting slammed every single way. And don't talk to me about a young person trying to buy a house right now. When we're trying to bring in a tax incentive for reward for effort when it comes to hospitality, and they're trying to make it out the big boss against the barista. This divisive politics just keeps going, and we just certainly need a change. And I thank the state Labour government for changing people's mind as well, because there was a mood for change. You saw that in Werribee, you saw that in Paran, and it's going to happen at the Dunkley election in a couple of months' time.
Just in terms of the interest rate cut, obviously people have had 12 interest rate rises. Even if they see one cut, it won't make a huge difference.
It'll take the edge off, we hope, a little bit, and hopefully that will happen in the next week or so. I think one of the things I would like to turn to I've been in the role, as you know, for 11 months. In the 11 months that I've been in the role, and as we head towards the next federal election, I've seen two policies come out of the opposition. And one is the $600 billion investment into nuclear. That's going to cost every household an additional $1,200 per household before the nuclear 2 plants are actually built. So that's another cost of living expense for families. And then, getting back to the long lunch policy, that is the second policy. So that's going to cost something like $1.6 to $10 billion worth of taxpayers' money.
Treasury estimates, the opposition just contests that it's that much. They say it'll be less.
Regardless, thanks for that clarification.
No, it's just to be fair. There is a contest about how much that might cost.
But they're the two policies. One's about long lunches for the boss, and the other one's about a nuclear pipe dream or fantasy that's going to take 20 to 30 years to build. We've got people that are impacted by the cost of living. We've inherited a messy history through 10 years of opposition, not caring about people in our community. We've been turning a massive ship around that was going in the other direction and wasn't looking after the people in our communities that most of you are all businesses and community leaders, are here because you're interested in politics, you're interested in leading in your communities. We need governments that are going to look after the people of our communities. And that's what Labor at a federal level has been doing.
Thank you for that. I think you might know a girl called Joan Kerner. In 1991, sold off 50% of Loy Lang. So she started privatizing the whole energy space. There's also a ban on gas in Victoria. What we believe is a sensible mix of every single energy source that is available worldwide. Nuclear, gas, renewables, you name it. When our population doubles in 50 years' time, our industry will double as well. And the idea that is 100% renewables, or that we stop gas, stop coal, stop nuclear, and it's 100% renewables, not only do I think it's a detriment to people and the reliability, I actually think it's a national security risk as well, not having our secure, affordable, clean energy. And we know as well, young people who are passionate about the climate support nuclear. It is happening all over the world. And we know that the coal industry is going in Victoria. We know the timber mills have been closed down. We know we're importing everything. And this is actually going to help regional and rural Victoria with industry for generations to come. I'll always back that. Labor mightn't.
Jodie, obviously this is it's probably one of the biggest differences, I think, going into a federal election that I observe, like quite different policies. And Australia has, been very, very uncomfortable about nuclear in the past. So there is very much a contest on this issue. I know that it is kind of highly contested and there are different views. Is this talked about by the constituents that you're door knocking?
Oh,
People raising
absolutely.
it?
I have great conversations with people on the doors about, what matters most to them.
Do they raise the nuclear issue?
Look, if I, lean into the conversation and I want to test some things with people, we'll get different views. But in the main, the people that I hang out with are very pro renewables, not nuclear. I think the thing that we've got to keep in our mind's eye is the plan that Dutton has and the opposition is 20 to 30 years away. We have already got our 25%, we're 25% into meeting our net zero target in 2030. And in Victoria, 37% of the energy that we're generating is coming from renewables already. So we're on the way, we're moving and we're investing. This pipe dream, that's on the never never, as far as I'm concerned, is 20 to 30 years away. And I can't see that having any impact on the electricity bills that everyone is concerned about anytime soon. So I think it's a farcical policy.
Have you been speaking to your constituents about it?
It is one of the biggest things, but what Labor will want you to do, and the Teals, what they will really want you to do is having power plants on Frankston foreshore and make it really Nobody is disagreeing with Peter Dutton. They might want renewables, but no one is out there protesting against nuclear. It is an energy mix that we know that countries right around the world are investing more into. It's going to be 40% of our mix. So it's not the whole 100%.
No, but it does take a while, right?
It does, but the idea that it's going to take 30 years, that's, again, just fear-mongering. That's what they love to do. They love to fear-monger. They haven't told us how much their renewable-only cost is. We believe it could be into the trillions of dollars. So the idea that they say $600 billion is too much, which we disagree with, theirs is more. And every 15 to 20 years, it has to be renewed and turned over. They promised $275 reduction. It's gone up $1,000 per year. They say one thing, they do another. I just think what's farcical is this Labor government.
Quick reply, and then I'll
Quick
get to my next question.
reply. When we took over government from Scott Morrison, there were 19 different energy policies. Industry, states and territories had no foundation or framework from which to work from to be able to rebuild energy in this country. So we've mopped up that mess. We've got an energy minister, we've got a climate minister, and we've got a strategy in place that is unified around renewables, leaning into coal as we need to, as we transition. So I think the plan is very strategic, it's very clear. and the best use of resources.
Okay, so I've got a broader question before we get to our Slido questions, and some of the Slido questions have already been addressed, so I'm going to get to some of the fresher ones. But just on, obviously you are candidates, or you're the sitting member, but you're candidates in the next electorate, but you've got leaders, and often, we're getting a little more presidential sometimes, aren't we, in Australia? It becomes very much focused on the leaders as soon as the campaign starts. So on leadership, I wonder, and I'll start with you if we can, Nathan, what you admire most about your party's leader.
He is someone of immense integrity. He is putting forward his vision, which is, as you mentioned, it is different than Labour's. He has a proven track record. We spent a lot of time with him during the by-election. Himself and his wife are absolutely incredibly thoughtful, engaging people. And he's a very common sense, practical person. They want to paint people in whatever way they want. This man has a clear vision for our community. There's more young men voting for him than ever before. Why? Because they feel left out. They're forgotten by the Labour Party. More women are coming back to Peter Dutton because he's securing our border. He's doing the things that actually matter, and he is different than the Labour Party. And going back to Jodie's point earlier about having ministers, environmental ministers, Tanya and Lily, they can't even get on. They don't even agree on things. So one says wind, one rejects it. One says gas, one rejects it. So the idea that you're streamlining, they can't even agree themselves. And you would think that they'd have one voice when it comes to national energy, and they can't even agree themselves. So.
Jodie, same question to you in terms of what you admire about your leader, who's the Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese. You've actually worked with him in the caucus, of course.
I have, and it's an absolute honour to have the responsibility that I've had the last 11 months to be the federal MP for Dunkley. Not many people get the opportunity to sit in that seat, and I have, and I take that very seriously. So, the Prime Minister. So he has led the most cohesive government that we've seen in the last 13 years. We've had no scandals. We've had no ministers being stood down because they've been misbehaving. We've had a cohesive government that has passed more legislation in the last 3 years than the previous government. Now, that sort of work ethic comes from a consolidated effort by the leader and his leadership team. So I'm very proud to be part of this government. When I took on this role and was elected by the people of Dunkley, I wasn't sure if I would fit in. I wasn't sure what to expect. I haven't been embraced and supported to do my role and to be the advocate for Dunkley and supported to keep nagging the ministers for money for Dunkley. But the other thing that I have seen is just incredible teamwork, and it's phenomenal. I was speaking to one of Zoe's colleagues the other day, and respect to you, Zoe, and I said he was a by-election winner, and I said, how are you going? And he says, it's cutthroat. I have to watch my back all the time. That is a very stark difference to the experience that I've had, which enables me to get on wholeheartedly and represent the community of Dunkley.
Politics is definitely cutthroat, that's for sure, I reckon, in most parties. I want to ask a couple of questions from the Slido, and this one's come up and a lot of people have liked it, which makes me think it's a very important question to ask. How will the candidates ensure the work of the Peninsula-based National Centre for Healthy Ageing continues in the future for better health and aged care?
Yeah, it was the Liberals who built it, and it's the Labour Party that are cutting the funding. So what we need to make sure is that we have at least 5 years more of ongoing support, because the work that they're doing within Dunkley and Australia-wide is absolutely important, but the research and the data that they're receiving will change people's lives and how they live. So for me, we paid the Liberals under Greg Hunt $32 million to build it. It would be a shame if that money didn't continue to make sure that they're operational.
Jodie, same question.
So I've had the pleasure of visiting the NCHA and seeing the incredible work that they do. It's one of two centres in the world, and so it's an absolute asset to have in our community. One of the things, just before Christmas, I had members from the NCHA come to me with a request for $25 million for 5 years. I've recently requested a business case for that. That's $25 million. It's a lot of money. We're currently, I've met with the Minister, Mark Butler's office, and we're speaking to him about that and considering the options and the opportunities. We want that centre in and the incredible work to remain, and alongside a range of other highly important initiatives, we're reviewing it.
Okay. Another question here. I do love names, but some of them are anonymous. It's all very mysterious. Who are you? But here's the question. It's a good one. We know that Geelong has the NDIS headquarters. Would you advocate for a major federal government office in Frankston City? Interesting question.
Well, we've advocated for federal and state head offices, vicinity centres. I wanted to do a $600 million redevelopment if they got a head office. And there was no look. I will always be a champion. I did it as mayor. I'll do it if I'm fortunate enough to become the member for Dunkley. Always, every day, have a national office. But when you look at the Southeast Water Building, it's at 50% capacity. So the way I see it is, if it's not just about new shiny buildings, it's about capitalizing and increasing the capacity of the buildings that we already here. So we actually have more people quicker in Frankston City.
Jodie?
I think with the introduction of the FMAC into Dunkley, that lends itself to investing in and having other federal departments in the community. And so, of course, I'd be advocating strongly.
There's a question here, which I'll start with you, but I'd like to hear too from Simon, somebody who is not afraid of their own name, who asks about gambling, which of course was very much championed by your predecessor, Peter Murphy, who I knew very well as well, for who had really made a name on this issue of gambling, as you all know in this room. In your maiden speech, Jodie, to Parliament, you talked about the scourge of gambling. What has happened to the legislation on gambling advertising?
Thanks, Simon. Where's Simon? Simon might not want to put his hand up. Gambling, I support a total ban on gambling, just put that right out there. I've worked in the domestic family violence and community sector for over 30 years. And I see the impact of gambling and have seen for decades, so I know that it is an issue. So the Win Some, You Lose More report had 31 recommendations, and 7 of those recommendations have been implemented. And I am really clear that there is more to do. I have met with the Prime Minister himself about the report and the recommendations and what's going to happen and when, and also the Minister for Communications Office. I've been a strong advocate for when are we going to see more on the ground. I know there's been significant consultation with every state and territory and other key organisations about what to do and when, and which are the key target groups that gambling is most impacting. We know it's men, 18 to 40, and we also know it's young people. You will have also seen that we have introduced a world first, and I'm looking at Wayne over here right now from Smack Talk, the world first ban on social media for young people under 16-year-olds. That is going to be one of the other initiatives that backs in any gambling reforms, because we don't need young people on social media playing games and being influenced by advertising. So there's more to come in a second term of government, and I will be advocating for that very strongly.
I have to ask a follow-up. Are you a bit disappointed it didn't happen in the first time?
Of course, yes. I'm here because of Peter,
Yeah.
so absolutely.
Nathan?
I'm very disappointed that it hasn't happened as well. It was promised to the people of Dunkley last year, carrying on Peter Murphy's legacy, who went around the country for something like 18 months, created a report, and they failed to do it. For me, I will be advocating to get a ban of online gambling as well.
Do you believe in a complete ban? Because that's the debate, whether it's partial or not. Do you want a complete ban?
Myself,
Yeah.
I don't mind a complete ban online, but it has to be a phased approach. There's no how would I say it? Come in tomorrow morning, it's gone. It has to be a phased out approach. But right now, it is unfortunate that they talk about it every now and then. It pops up, and they still haven't done it. The Greens and Labour, he has a majority in government. They can do it. I just do not know why. And that was a major promise to the people of Dunkley last year, and they failed to do it, unfortunately.
How important to you is fostering relationships with your state and council counterparts in delivering for the local community?
Partnerships and relationships are things that are essential to the way I operate, and I think people that know me well would know that. I haven't had a successful career because I've stood on the sides. I've got in there, I've made friends with people from the opposition. I've worked with Mornington Peninsula. Oh, I think we've gone flat.
Have you?
Yes.
Just use my microphone while I try and fix this.
Sorry. I don't have COVID. Only joking. So building relationships and partnerships is central to the way I operate. So I've been working and meeting with the Frankston City Council more recently. The work that I did through the Women's Spirit project, founding that organisation, involved me partnering with Mornington Shire, Kingston Council, Frankston Council. So it's central to who I am. Despite Nathan and I being in blue and red, we can still stand on a polling booth or wrapping Christmas presents at Christmas time together. And that, I think, is a testimony to my ability to go, you know what, yes, we're on different sides of the fence, but I am keen to create relationships to get things done.
I want to know about your different Christmas wrapping paper strategies, actually. Did you have similar strategies?
Anything square, I did. Anything difficult, I handed over to Jody. Just to make myself look better.
Okay, I'm glad to see a collaboration here. This is the stuff that gives me hope for the future. But yes, on collaborating to the question.
Look, I was a mayor in the 2022 state and federal election. I think it was the largest advocacy results that we've ever seen. I worked with all levels of government, both sides, throughout that time. Did we get everything right? No, but we stepped maybe 3 steps forward, maybe 1 step back. It is important that ego is left outside the door and you're advocating for the people of Dunkley. In my case at the time, it was Frankston City. And that is why we put $30 million when I was a mayor into Frankston Basketball and Gymnastics Stadium. When we did Canada Commuter Car Park, which it was $22 million. And if you look at the Frankston car park, it's $87 million. It's 350% more per space than what council was able to do. So for me, I want to work with council, building the infrastructure in a timely, affordable way. And I think we can build a lot more for the same value of money.
I just want to give a nod to my state colleague, Paul Edbrook. So I think the thing that is really clear to me, having been in this role for 11 months, that Dunkley is primed for a thriving and incredible future as an area, and that is obvious. And that is obvious because I know that Peter, Paul and Mary, not quite Mary, had a fantastic relationship and worked together with council to get everything that you can currently see in this community built. So we're primed for the FMAC, and I think it's really exciting.
And just to touch on that, Peter, Paul, and Mary, Peter Murphy called me the Mary. I'm not sure if that was a compliment or not, but they were Peter, that was Paul, I was Mary. If it gets me $30 million, I can be whoever you want me to be,
That's a good attitude, I think, to politics for sure. Absolutely. Look, another really great local question, again, anonymous. So be proud of your questions. It's a good question. Our community and support centres are seeing more people doing it tough and looking for shelter and food. Will you support extra funding for our centres? Yeah, you've got the mic, you can answer.
I have no announcement today, but absolutely. When I was mayor again, with my colleagues, we created the emergency relief fund. It was $200,000 to help directly emergency relief and food banks right around the city to increase their capacity and help more people. Food banks at a record level. The one in Frankston North, local to community, serving 4,000 people a year. You know, community support Frankston will never have enough money. For me, there was promises made. You know, we have a cost of living crisis, record levels, and the money has stayed the same. So for me, I would be pushing for more. And unfortunately, local gave money, federal gave money, state haven't given money. I think it's a three-tier system. It might be different things that you fund, but it's all together. And when people are going to emergency relief, right, they need housing, they need detox facilities, they need, it might be crisis accommodation. We have none of it. So for me, and the idea that we're at record levels and there's no extra funding, it just doesn't make sense.
Jodie?
That's not my recollection of the facts. I would say that as a result of COVID, all the emergency relief centres across the country got more funding, and Community Support Frankston certainly did. So they've received incrementally more funding every year. And Nathan, I just want to jog your memory. You did cut $200,000 as a mayor for Community Support Frankston. Just going to leave that out there. The other thing I would like to say is that currently Community Support Frankston has a tender in, which is it's a confidential for increased funding over $500,000. That's under consideration by the department. I can't talk to that, and
Facts. Facts are Liberal government gave the extra funding during COVID. Fact. Fact number two is we reduced the funding by $200,000 because Jody Bellier and Michelle, is it, promised extra funding. And we created a $200,000 emergency relief fund that not just helped Community Support Frankston, but every single food bank in the city of Frankston, which Paul, Sonia, Paul Mercurio, and Jody didn't give $1 to.
I'll review that.
Okay. They're fact-checking each other. I think what I say often in my business, my friends, is there's always nuance in these things, and there's lots of nuance that they've both explored a little bit, but let's park it because there's another good question here. The excise take on tobacco has crashed by billions of dollars. What is your party going to do to shut down illicit tobacco, Jodie?
Illicit tobacco. Well, we've got laws in there to ensure that people that are doing the wrong thing are going to get repercussions for bringing and selling illicit tobacco. So it's about making sure we're cracking down on crime, which could lead me to talk about youth crime and safety. I know that that's probably a topic that you'd like to talk about too. So youth crime and safety, for those that don't know, I was a youth worker for 20 years. I ran a youth service in Frankston. I'm used to working with some of the most at-risk young people in our community across Frankston, state and national. Crime is a real concern for us, and I just want to put it on the table that I think Jacinta Allen has agreed to do a review of bail laws, and I totally support that. We need more consequences for action for young people in our community that are doing the wrong thing. And in my time as a youth worker, working with some of the most disadvantaged young people, you've got to have boundaries. We know that as parents, and if some of these young people don't have the role models and parents in their life, unfortunately, we need some structures and systems in place that are going to set better consequences and boundaries. And I'd probably say we need to have a chat to our police colleagues about increased patrols. But I am aware on the 5th of March, the Vic Police are running a forum in Dunkley. And I've been meeting with the police and engaging with local youth organisations to understand this issue in more depth and know that there is more that we need to do as a collective.
Just the illicit tobacco question.
That was a good segue. I don't know. Yep.
Fair enough answer. I wish more people did that. Take it on notice.
If you want me to touch on youth crime, which if you
It
look,
wasn't the question,
no,
but,
but I will talk
can.
about it. When you have a cost of living crisis, crime goes up. When you don't have housing, you don't have mental health support, you don't have detox facilities, you don't have crisis accommodation, crime goes up. Right now, crime is up in Bayside 33%. Every single day, if you go onto your local pages, there's another car being robbed or burned, another house being intruded. And this is not just a crime on the young person who's getting away with it, slap on the wrist because of the weak bail laws and crime through the state government. What I will say is, imagine the people. If your car is robbed or your house is broken into, they'll get no punishment and you will live with that for the rest of your life. That's the sort of thing that we need to be doing. And what Jodie was saying, I agree on everything she's saying. But again, it's like Labour. They say one thing, do another. Jacinta Allen came out saying there's going to be a review. Her minister, is it Anthony Cardone or whatever his name is, said it's not going to be a full review. So they can't even agree. And if you can't agree, and if you don't have consistency between your ministers, your government, your magistrates, etc., and you can't pay your police correctly, nothing is going to get done.
Look, I want to, we're going to sort of wind it up. I'll ask one more question from the Slido questions, and then I've got an excellent final question. Of course, people are beginning lunch. 2 candidate conversations today, which is 2 for the price of 1. I love it. 2 electorates that are both very well watched, I've got to say, across the country. But there is, basically, I've overwhelmingly found that our questions have been about transport, about housing, about infrastructure, which won't surprise you. And they're all really adjacent to the big one of cost of living, right? Like that is overwhelmingly the question. But there is one, I think, that's coming through, which is in relation to small business particularly. And Jodie, I'll put it to you. It's more critical of Labor, but I do want to hear from both of you. The economy has struggled under federal Labor leadership, says the question. How will you, under either party, do differently to support our struggling business community?
So this government has invested $640 million into supporting small businesses across the country. We've introduced a number of initiatives, including $64 million went into supporting small businesses with cyber security. We know that a lot of small businesses have struggled with that. We had a forum with Claire O'Neill some months back where we talked about the impact of poor cyber security. There's been a $20,000 asset write-off initiative that is supporting small businesses. We've also included like an EAP for small businesses with wellbeing and health initiatives because, I've run 2 small organisations, a consulting organisation and the Women's Spirit Project. So I know the pressures of working with and running a small business. And it's really intense. You're working, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, trying to get your passion project up and running and surviving. So the other thing that the feds have just announced, I think it was last week, is a new national strategy for small business. And one of the things that we're going to be doing with small business is continuing to work with and consult with small business about what do you need so that you can actually survive and thrive well into the future. And that's going to be really important for me. I welcome people with ideas and suggestions to come and chat to me about small business and some of the issues and concerns they have, because that's something that I would definitely advocate and feed up the line.
Nathan?
Wow, that's a big one. Look, Labour, we know, are for big business. Liberals always say they're for big business. The superannuation funds, multi-trillion-dollar business, all fund the unions, all fund Labour. So whatever they do, they always support big business. We are the party that supports small business. Is it 60% of all people employed are small business owners and their employees? If you look at the fringe tax benefits that we did recently, that is a small small. The ridiculous 1.8 billion is nonsense, but that's a small change to the fringe tax benefits that allows people to reward their staff and go out and help and support our cafes, our restaurants, our entertainment precincts, particularly in Dunkley. You see it now, there's more restaurants and rooftop bars opening up. That's the sort of thing we need our businesses to going in supporting them, because they're just surviving. And then when you have interest rates, nobody can get a credit, they can't go into their overdraft, they can't borrow, they're not investing, there's no housing for people, so they can't even find employees. There's so much red and green tape. If you're trying to develop now with the sustainable development, environmentally sustainable development, the land tax, the vehicle land tax, they can say what they want, Patricia, that they support small business, but actions, people are surviving, just surviving. People are selling their only property that is for their own superannuation fund because they can't afford the charges, be it rates, be it insurance, be it land tax, whatever it is, driving up the prices of rent or coming off the market, creating more homeless. It's this just vicious cycle, and they have their heads in the clouds, both state and federal. I've never seen it. I'm here 13 years. I've never seen a government, and we went through a GFC in Ireland. I've never seen a government who is so out of touch with the everyday, hardworking Australians.
Final question before we say goodbye to the Dunkley part of our conversation today, and it's a simple one, really, which is, what is your final pitch to voters in this room as they consider your alternatives for the electorate, thinking locally as you look forward to what could be an election in just weeks away, I think?
I've been in this role for 11 months and taking on filling the shoes of Peter Murphy, attempting to, and I think I haven't left a stone unturned in my efforts. Tenacity is a word that I would use to describe myself. I'm tenacious. I am into working with people. It doesn't matter whether you're blue or red or teal. And I'm committed to building a community that is inclusive of people from all walks of life in our patch of Dunkley. And I've demonstrated that through my career. I've worked with some of the biggest businessmen in the country, the Meyer family and the Beeson family, and I learnt the tools of my trade, which meant that I then could pursue and develop organisations that support people that are struggling. So I can work with business, I can work with people that are struggling. I am tenacious and I'm committed to being the strong local voice and delivering for Dunkley.
Nathan, what's your final pitch?
I have proven myself over the last 4 years, being Deputy Mayor, 3 terms as Mayor, to get stuff done. You see Frankston is changing because of the stuff that we actually implemented over the last 3 years. You talk about FMAC, it gives people certainty, businesses, community, and developers. We know that more businesses are moving into Frankston because they can feel the energy and the vibe of Frankston City come alive. What I will be is a champion for the people of Dunkley. I won't be telling every sports club and organisation to apply for the Thriving Suburbs grant and get $0 for Dunkley. What I will be doing is following Peter Murphy's legacy and getting a ban on gambling ads online. What I will be doing is fighting every single day that we have housing for people, be it crisis accommodation, social affordable, or everyday Aussie housing. And we need to make sure that young people have the ability to believe that they will have a house. So for me, you can come to it. There's going to be a few announcements on March 21st, which is my fundraiser. Just a cheeky plug there, but we're going to set out the vision on March 21st. Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you both, and so does everyone in the room, in fact. This is what I do all the time, talk politics. I love it. And I'll be watching your electorate of Dunkley. Just some words of advice. Play nicely with each other.
Well, I played nicely during the by-election. These people didn't. And I commit to doing it this time again.
All right. Well, can I get a commitment? Both of you will be very kind. Yeah.
Can you remember Sky News when she was asked, why did you go dirty? She couldn't answer it. So I make a pledge today that I will keep it clean every step of the way.
All right. And I'll pass the mic over. so that we can hear from you, Jodie.
That question was never posed to me, Nathan, by Sky News.
All right. I can see that it's going to be a very spirited campaign. I'm going to move into Frankston just to watch the shenanigans. Enjoy your lunch. We'll be back soon with Flinders. I want to invite the candidates for the seat of Flinders up to the stage for this next sit-down conversation. And I will ask you to lower your voices in respect to our candidates. Zoe McKenzie, make her way up to the stage. She, of course, Zoe McKenzie, is the sitting Liberal member for Flinders and will be recontesting the seat. Sarah Race is the Labor candidate for Flinders, and Ben Smith is the independent candidate. So welcome the three of them, and this particular forum is really, you know, and of course other people will put their name on the ballot paper too, but this is pretty much a three-cornered race, which makes it a little spicier for our conversation. Now, before we get to the questions, and again, if you can lower your voices, just, you know, in respect to our candidates who, as I said with the last discussion we had about Dunkley, don't forget, these people put it out there. They face vicious commentary every day in a very febrile environment. We want to keep this really respectful and find out what their priorities are. And I think we're going to lower the music as well, although I do feel like breaking out into dance, which is not what I was invited for, so I won't. All right, I will. No, I won't. And I will ask them to all open up by telling us a little about themselves and what their priorities and kind of vision are, starting with you, Zoe. And we're going to, can I say, we're going to share the mic. Let me just press this button for you, Zoe. Yes, very technical. We're going to share the mic, pass it around.
Hello everyone, my name is Zoe McKenzie and I was elected as the member of Flinders at the May 22 election. I'm a resident of Sorrento in a beautiful township where I bought my home there, I think 14 years ago now. I know that's a question coming up in the Slido, so I'm just getting in early. So in terms of my vision for this extraordinary part of the country, we are one of the luckiest places in the world, I think. We have the great good fortune of a thriving set of local communities and townships. We have people who turn up, who contribute an extraordinary capacity for volunteerism. People still run around and play sport. You've got beaches, you've got hills, you've got thriving small businesses, less thriving now perhaps than 3 years ago, but an extraordinarily precious place to live. And I am grateful every day that I get to represent this place in Canberra. Representing this place in Canberra gives me a particular perspective in terms of the businesses we have here, whether that be agriculture, health, retail, industry, some minor industries here as well. So I'm constantly taking the stories of this part of Australia to the legislative table in Canberra, because unless I'm telling the stories from here, we will not make policy that suits our conditions of life here well. And they will go to things like cost of living, small business support, and investment in infrastructure. As no doubt you know, many of you know the work of the committee, many of you are members of the committee. You know exactly how we do not fare compared to Freedom Lands, as I like to refer to them, across the bay, the Geelong and Barwon coast, that does much better in terms of investment in some of the living day experiences, things like public transport that are largely state responsibilities, but somehow the money always goes across the bay and not so much here. So I do what I can for this community in Canberra, whilst also holding the guys in the state to account for what we do not get here.
Thank you very much, Zoe. Sarah?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. It's lovely to see so many friendly faces in the audience today. I was a bit nervous because there's 220 of you, and I'm not sure I've spoken in front of as large a crowd as this, but it's lovely to see you here. So Sarah Race, I have been a local councillor for 4 years on the Mornington Peninsula Shire Council, and I absolutely loved being a councillor. It has been one of the great privileges of my life, and that privilege has come from actually meeting people right across the peninsula in their community groups, from Rotary to the sports clubs to the land care groups. I love people that weed, voluntary weed. They are they're the heroes of the peninsula. I have a husband, Andy. He is an incredible man, and I have 2 children, Nellie and Pim. They go to the local schools. Both are at Rosebud Secondary this year, which is a fabulous local school. They did go to Rye Primary School and they were at Rye Kinder. So have brought my family up here, having had a beautiful childhood where my grandparents had a holiday house in Blackgowrie, and when my husband and I decided to buy a house, we thought Mornington Peninsula, because at that stage it was affordable. We bought a house on 1 wage, and that was incredible, and I don't know that many people would be able to do that now on the peninsula. So my vision for the peninsula is that we all work together for the peninsula. I know one of the things when I first met Matt McDonald, who is probably one of the founding members of the Committee for Mornington Peninsula as it was then, was he was looking over at Geelong and saw that all levels of government in Geelong were working towards the same thing. They were all working together with joint advocacy and singing from the same hymn sheet. And then they were getting things delivered over to Geelong. And he was thinking, well, I would like to do the same here on the peninsula. And I think, having those conversations with other people, as well as contributing to the social fabric of our community, because the peninsula is so vastly different. People in Summers have a different experience than people in Hastings, who have a different experience for people in Tyab, Dramana, Portsea, Sorrento, Tookarook, where I am. We all experience the peninsula differently, and that needs to be reflected in the policies that we have delivered here on the peninsula as well. I think for us, one of the things that we've got quite stuck on is that when you go and speak to other levels of government or in other parts of the world, they all think we're Lindsay Fox. They all think we have helicopters and that we have beachside clifftop mansions. And, for most of us, that'd be great. Maybe that's the vision for us, but I don't think so. We couldn't all do that. But we need to get the story of everyday peninsula people up the ladder. We need to talk to our state and federal counterparts all the time, from local government right up, and everybody needs to understand that the peninsula is a diverse place. So that's my vision.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And to you, Ben.
Thank you. Yes, Ben Smith. I've been the CEO of the Mornington Community Support Centre for the last few years, and for those who aren't aware of what we do there, it's really about providing emergency relief and crisis support for people, housing assistance and social inclusion. And what I've seen there and in my career in community development is really both the real struggles that people go through in life when they hit crisis point, but also the real strength that community has when it comes together to support those people and to support each other. So for me, I'm just so passionate about bringing people together with a common goal, with basically, trying to execute the things that we all want to do in life, the dreams that we have. In addition to that, I own a small business with my wife. We've been a little retail store down in the town of Flinders, which makes it really interesting for me to say I have a business in Flinders, and people say, well, where? Well, in Flinders. The town of, and we've been there for about 10 years now, and so we really understand what it looks like to have a small family, run a small business, and the struggles that we all go through to pay the bills, but also to make sure that you can have enough in the bank to invest in your business moving forward. And for me, why politics and why an independent? That's a really kind of difficult one, I guess, to unpack in a very short amount of time. But fundamentally for me, what I see on a day-to-day basis when I'm speaking with people who are doing it really tough is that they're fed up with the system that's been in existence for a very, very long time, where we have a two-party system right now which relies on someone getting elected and then being in government and maybe having enough power within their party to get what's needed down on the peninsula. And for all too long, we've seen a system down here which hasn't delivered outcomes. And I've heard, both the people of Dunkley and the people of Flinders already express that. And so for me, the question is, why are we continuing to do the same thing and expecting a different outcome? So that's why I'm putting my hand up to offer another alternative to the race.
Thank you very much to all three of you. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to address questions to you using your name, and then you're going to work collaboratively to then hustle the one microphone you're sharing. This is a really good exercise, guys, in watching if they can work together for their community and respond, okay? So you've got to listen carefully to who I'm addressing the question to. So we've heard consistently that there is a great sense in this region that you feel that over the other side, as Zoe says, Geelong gets the big bucks and that you feel like you are deprived of that. So in terms of advocacy, and Zoe, I'll go to you on this, but it won't always be linear, so you have to listen. I'm making it again. What will you do to really specifically advocate if there is a Dutton government? I know it's difficult if it's not a government that you're able to form, but that you will advocate for in terms of infrastructure funding for this region.
First of all, can I just make a comment in relation to, we should say Ben, Sarah and I have worked together for years, right? So whether it was in relation to when I was on the committee for the Mornington Peninsula and trying to get our spider crab saved. I worked with Sarah, she was on the council, she raised the spider crabs issue. Ben and I have worked together on myriad issues since I was elected. So the peninsula is probably quite different in that we are a bunch of small country towns, and Jodie and I have worked together on stuff too, right? So we're small country towns and we tend to collaborate as and when we need to. I don't think that's too much of an issue here. In terms of infrastructure, okay, so I haven't wasted a moment of opposition. I have worked in many public policy roles and normally had my finger very close to the green button, whether that was in education, training, trade, communications, and the Attorney General's portfolio. But in opposition, you're not as close to the green button as you would like to be. So the point was to make sure that if there is to be an incoming Dutton government, that all the senior stakeholders in that government know exactly the peculiarities of the peninsula and what we need down here. I had Susan Lee down here a couple of weeks ago. We had a small business roundtable for women. Many of the women who are in this room today were actually at that roundtable. I've had Peter Dutton down here before. I've had Ted O'Brien down here before. I've had John O'Dunian down here has come to see the beautiful French island to understand what is extraordinary about that place. So I've had a conga line of what will be senior ministers in a Dutton government coming down here and seeing what we live with. Peter Dutton has stood down there at the Jetty Road intersection with Sam Groth and myself. May I say the reason why people think we're all Lindsay Fox and Portsea Polo is because the Prime Minister flew in here on a helicopter to have lunch at Lindsay's house, just embedding that theory. I probably didn't want to get through Jetty Road in January, which I can completely understand. But you also have to remember that that government, the Albanese government, took $300 million out of budgeted infrastructure for this seat. The only reason they didn't take 320 is I went absolutely ape in Parliament in relation to the two intersections in the Nepean Highway where there were regular accidents and indeed deaths. So those two were saved, but only because I got this community excited. People wrote in, I put a stupid big sign up in the middle of Uralla Road and said, do not take the money away from these intersections because people are being hurt here. And I stood up in the chamber and I said to Catherine King, I will hold you responsible for every single injury at that intersection from here on in, and then did. That poor woman, she sees me now in the lounge and she runs a mile. But anyway, it is what it is. Mark Butler's the same. But my point is, I have brought people down here to see what it is, and I don't shut up about it, right? Every time I get up in Parliament, every time I speak on the television, whether it's ABC with you or Sky, I talk about something that's happening down here on the peninsula so people understand that we actually have some of the lowest SES suburbs in the entire country. It's important they understand it. It's important they understand our needs, important that they understand our passion for where we live in particular, and that is something I do not shut up about.
Okay, Ben, we're going to go to you on the infrastructure question because you are probably more associated, because I understand you're getting some funding from the Climate 200 group, but then we will talk about climate because that's a big issue. But on the infrastructure question, I'm wondering what you make of the complaints that there's not enough investment here.
Yeah, I would agree with those complaints. In fact, I've probably submitted a few in my time as well. Living in Cape Shank, I travel along Bonio Road every single day, dodging. I think I'm fairly sure I've been nearly pulled over a few times for looking like I'm a dodgy driver. But I think for me, it's really clear that because this seat has been safe for far too long, and there's been not enough competition in the political sector, in representation, we haven't seen the outcomes delivered. We've had MPs in government, we've had MPs as ministers, we've had MPs who are, speaking about our area really eloquently and with great advocacy, but we haven't seen the outcomes on the ground. Whether it's been because funding's been removed by successive governments, or whether it's been because it just wasn't delivered in the first place. I think people are really, really fed up with the current system of not delivering on those infrastructure promises. I don't have a barrel of money that I can commit to any of these projects. What I do have is a community behind me that's saying we need change. And I guess what we've seen from the independents in Parliament in this last term and in previous years has been a really deliberate action to work with the other parties across the aisle, which in many ways is a real advantage for the independents, to open doors, to invite people to join in collaboration exercises, both at state and federal level, to be able to deliver the outcomes for people down here.
Thank you. Sarah?
Yeah, thank you. I want to start with that adding to that all politics is local. So people feel politics where they live, in their schools, in their community groups, in their sporting groups, particularly their basketball clubs right now, and their footpaths. And I think when we look at infrastructure, this is where I was talking about before, we really need to work together. I know local councils, so I'm going to do a shout out for local councils because it's where I spend a lot of time, do a lot of this work already. And I think by collaborating together, we could get better outcomes for our communities. So I want to think about the federal government, the funding that they put into roads, and the Albanese Labor government, and I'm going to do a big shout out to them. They doubled the local community roads and infrastructure funding from $500 million to $1 billion. That is untied funding that comes to local councils to deliver for their communities where they live. That is really important funding. I, of course, would love to see more of that. I can't promise that because, we're not making promises today, and I don't know what if that would be one, but that would be something that I would advocate for because that hits communities where they actually are. It's based on population and size of road and roads length. But I would like to see that also take in things like tourism. The Mornington Peninsula has 8 million tourists a year, and 6 million of those are, day trippers. That you could think about that as probably an extra 4 million cars on our roads every year. That has a big impact, and I don't think that's necessarily taken into consideration. So when we're looking at infrastructure, I think we need to be a bit more clever about how we do it and what really delivers for our community.
Excellent.
Can I just have a quick right of reply on
All
that?
right.
What have the Romans ever done for us question? So I know that Ben is busy telling people that the major parties do nothing down here, but there's just one correction I need to make. This used to be, the southern part of this seat used to be the most marginal state seat held by the Andrews Labor government. I'm looking at Josh because I know he tried really hard, but it's fair to say he didn't succeed in getting much from this area. I know you tried, Josh, because Josh used to nag you about stuff too. So they held this seat by the tiniest of margins and put not a whole lot into it. I know we got a slightly more frequent 788 bus, and according to Sarah, we got some roads funding. But let me talk you through what you got from the coalition. Last week, I opened the Bays Comprehensive Cancer Centre with Jade Phelan, CEO in the room. That was $10 million. A few months earlier, Alexandra Park Pavilion, 2.6. Headspace in Rosebud and Hastings, 1.4. Jimmy's Place, 1.2. Yarwa, 5 million. Flinders Civic Station, 1.2. Somerville Baxter Peninsula Link Trail, 2 million. Balnarring Pedestrian Crossing, 1 billion. Rosebud Clinical Trial Centre, the Nepean Highway Safety, 10 million for Forest and 10 million for Uralla. Potholes, about 10 million spent in 2021. I could keep going, so I'm going to. National Centre for Coasts and Climate, $24 million.
Am I going to have to wind her up? She's listing.
But my point is, this actual community has done very well out of a coalition government, and even when the Labor Party held it by the tiniest of margins, it barely made a dent in the needs of this community. Now, let me be clear about what an independent actually delivers for their seat. Precisely nothing. It's carping corner up there in the chamber, and they have delivered nothing for their communities.
Okay, I have to give now.
I know.
You know that, don't you? So I'm going to give you both a right of reply, and then that's it, man. Zip.
Oh, it's a good old arm wrestle.
I got more on the list. I got more on the list.
Oh,
Keep going.
it's fun, isn't it? Contest of ideas. It's the spirit of democracy.
I absolutely love a contest of ideas.
Look, I have to say, actually, Chris Brain did an incredible job when he was elected for 4 years. The schools that got delivered in our community is absolutely incredible. Dramana, Rosebud Primary School, Rosebud Secondary School, where my kids are at, and I chose to send them to Rosebud School not only because they've got the Principal of the Year, but because of the incredible building work that they've done there. The school is incredible. Bonio, Rye Primary School got money, Red Hill got money, Dramana Secondary got money. These schools in Nepean hadn't seen money for years, and now those kids are so proud of going to their schools, and it's an incredible learning environment for them. Not only did we get the 788 bus improvements, but we also got, and I know we're talking state politics, so I'm sorry to my state counterparts here, but the fast bus from Rosebud to Frankston is a life changer for people. I was speaking to a disability advocate the other day. who's absolutely impressed by that and loves taking it every single day. And also the Flexi Ride bus. I don't know if any of you have seen it. It's like an Uber for buses. It turns up at your door. You call it, turns up at your door, and it takes you to places around Rosebud. I met a lady door knocking the other day that was on her way out. She's lovely. She loved it. She forgot her jacket, went back in. The bus driver stopped for her, and off she goes on her day. That is incredible. That was an incredible delivery by Chris Brain in just 4 years.
Okay. I want to know if anybody feels like that's made a difference. All of that impact, all of that funding that might have been delivered a few years ago. It feels to me as though we're all still talking about the incredible lack of investment. And so we might well be celebrating that we've done some funding and done some great things, of which I am, I'm a part, but we're ticking off the tip of the iceberg as the whole problem. And I think that's the issue that we're seeing here. We're all screaming out for funding. I work in community services. We have not had an increase in funding for ages. COVID, we had a little boost, but it's been drop ever since. And what's happened is there's been an increase in demand, 40% year on year on year. Housing, homelessness, food relief, all of these things which we've got to fundraise for. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to be cooking sausages at Bunnings to feed people. That's really not a good scenario. So for me, we can talk a little bit more about the independents, I think, in a little bit, but we wouldn't have a National Anti-Corruption Commission if it weren't for the independents pushing it. We wouldn't be talking about political donation reform. We wouldn't be talking about truth in political advertising if it weren't for the independents on the crossbench pushing for those things. So, whilst I can't deliver you a big project today because I don't have any funding for that, you look at Helen Haynes. She's delivered more mobile phone towers in her electorate in country Victoria than any electorate across this nation as an independent. So there's significant impact they can make.
All right, we're going to talk about housing now because obviously that is a huge issue coming up on Slido, but just generally something we wanted to raise today too. Of course, we know that there is a housing crisis. It's been building over a long period of time. People can play the blame game, but there's a lot of collective responsibility when it comes to housing. It's a long policy lag. So I want to ask, if you became, again, in your case, but either of you for the first time, the member for this electorate, what would you do to meaningfully put roofs over people's heads in a place where there's a lot of competition for housing and it's becoming more and more of an acute issue? And I might, just to mix it up a bit, begin with Sarah.
Excellent, thank you. I became aware of the housing crisis when I started as a councillor, and we declared a housing crisis on the Mornington Peninsula in October 2021. And it just doesn't impact, it's not just homelessness, and I know that the homelessness statistics on the Mornington Peninsula are quite shocking. And for those of you who don't know, the Mornington Peninsula has the fourth highest homeless population of any LGA in Victoria. It's 1,000 people, roughly between 600 and 1,000 people are homeless, but out of those, about 20% are sleeping rough, and that's a high percentage of people sleeping rough than other locations as well. So that's pretty damning, and it's an interesting cohort of people that goes from mums with kids to to an older male population, to an older female population. It crosses society as well. We also like key worker housing, so businesses really struggle to get particularly workers over over the summer holidays as well. That's a struggle for them. Aged care really struggles getting workers. I know nursing, education, all of those things with key worker housing. It's also social and affordable housing. We have long waiting lists, but it's difficult just for an average person now to buy a house on the Mornington Peninsula. So I think we need to work better collaboratively, and this is where I'm going to talk again about all levels of government working together. All levels of government have a role to play in housing. Council has a really important role to play, and that's to do with the strategic planning level at Council. It's really important that we look at how we actually provide more housing on the peninsula, and I think we have to get clever about providing more housing on the peninsula because
You mean zoning?
Zoning, yeah, because we have 70% green wedge, and the green wedge is really important to the Mornington Peninsula and will become increasingly so because of climate change and farming. We really need to preserve our agricultural areas. But we need to possibly look at things like mixed-use zoning, where you're starting to see it in England, or in London in particular, because they're looking at how they house their population and not extend any further. So they're looking at industrial areas where you have commercial, industrial and residential. So you could imagine somewhere in Mornington, for example, in light industrial, where you could have residential, maybe, living above common folk might be quite nice actually, go down and get your morning coffee. And for younger people, that could mean that we have flats that they can actually afford. And quite surprising to some people, not everybody likes gardening, so that could be an alternative for people. We also need housing that provides accommodation for older people wanting to downsize, because we don't have much of that. So they're things that I would be interested in looking at.
Zoe, if I can give you the housing question next.
Yeah, sure. I agree with Sarah in that it's going to take all levels of government to address this issue, but it also takes the private sector, and in particular, it takes the private sector. If you look at building activity down here, last year residential building approvals 548, so far this year 236, down from a high of 1,531 in 17-18. So the incentives are just not there to build. Sarah's right, we've got green wedge and we want to preserve it, so that limits in itself what you can build here. But frankly, none of the incentives are in place for people to build here. At the moment, the average house here costs $1.1 million. No one in a low SES environment, essential workers as well, they're not in a position to buy that. You need to be earning at least about $100,000 a year, even to buy a unit in Hastings or Somerville. It is not affordable. But the answer to that is supply. At the same time, you must also address the desperate need for social and community housing. I have put this elsewhere in public, but we have 1,449 social and public housing dwellings in the peninsula. We have 428 currently offline. According to the census figure, we have 423 people who are homeless. That is a rubbery figure, but it is very hard to get anything better than that. But you do the maths. 428 properties unoccupied, 423 registered people as homeless. Somebody needs to pick up a hammer, for God's sakes. The government has put, the Victorian government, because they're their houses, have put $9 million into addressing this. 30% of our stock sitting unused. It is a disgrace on behalf of the state government to do that. But I get it, we've all got a part to do. Sarah was in the paper celebrating a highly embargoed not-for-publication announcement. I'm surprised you haven't taken credit for it, you should. So, and that is to provide some social housing for particularly women in crisis situation in Dunkley and or Flinders. It's something. I celebrate it, it's something. I say thank you to this government, it's something. But we need to do more, but they can start by getting those 428 properties back into circulation.
Ben?
Look, I've been the chair of the Peninsula Housing Network for the last couple of years. I've led housing forums and homelessness forums and worked with people in the sector. I know nearly every name of the people that work in this space. I've been working with Salvation Army, the community support centres, Fusion. The crisis at that bottom level of people that are seeing acute disadvantage is significant. And I think for me, what I've really noticed is a real lack of innovation when it comes to solving this housing crisis, or even just a lack of doing the things that we know will work. We know that if the government was to invest more in the publicly built housing, so we've once upon a time, it was 15% of new builds every year was built by the public sector. Now it's in the low single digits. Returning that level up a little bit will supply significant affordable housing. Now, you can sell some of that off to first home buyers, but keep some of it for social and affordable housing. There are so many solutions on the table. But again, like Zoe pointed out, we are not getting the investment on the peninsula. In the Victorian Housing Big Build, $5.5 billion. We got just over $10 million on the peninsula, 30 or 40 homes. We need like thousands and thousands of homes for that low SES community. But one thing that I'm really passionate about, and Sarah brought this up a little bit as well, is that the fact that we have the green wedge that does prevent significant land holdings from being developed into housing. We need to have a conversation as a community, both the business community and the not-for-profit sector, but also just widely, about what do we do then? 70% of our land can't be used for housing. Where's the leadership to pull the community together to say, okay, maybe we need to compromise somewhere. Maybe Mornington looks a little bit different, or Hastings or Rosebud or whatever the suburb is. Let's have some conversation about, state level planning, but national level investment when it comes to investing in a little bit more density or a little bit more change in the way we build homes. The last thing I'll say on that is that the number one type of home that we need on the Mornington Peninsula to fix the holes in the public housing register are single bedroom units, single bedroom stock. Developers are not going to build single bedroom stock, because there's no profit in there, right? So we need public investment. And I think what we're really seeing out of the current Housing Australia Future Fund opportunities is direct investment straight into the council level or a local level with community housing providers. I think we're going to see significant impact when we create those relationships more broadly, directly with local level.
Okay, really interesting. All right, we want to move now to one of the biggest issues in your seat, and that's issues around climate change and renewable energy and the energy future. And of course, it has many components, but I just want to explore one particular part of that, and that's the Port of Hastings and the idea of a Victorian, basically a renewable energy terminal to be at the epicentre in this region and this part of the world. I'll start with you, Zoe, if I can. As the federal MP, what will you do in this space, and do you support the Port of Hastings becoming the home of the state's renewable energy efforts?
So we should be clear, the renewable energy terminal was the sort of number one commitment of the Andrews government in this part of the world. It was the one kind of ticket that Paul Mercurio brandished far and wide. Although it would seem to me that left hand did not talk to left hand, because Tanya Plibersek dismissed it almost immediately on environmental grounds. For those who don't know, we have a UNESCO biosphere in Western Port. It's only one of 3 biospheres in the entire country. It is extraordinarily unique. It's one of the reasons why, again, the Coalition put $24 million into the National Centre for Coast and Climate to study the unique nature that we have down here in particular. Should quickly mention the Albanese government took away the last $8 million for it, but I convinced the universities to do it anyway, and it will start building in June. Nevertheless, we have this biosphere, and of course Tanya Plibersek did her job as Environment Minister and looked at the proposal and went, "You've got to be kidding me." And therefore, at that point, it stopped in its tracks. I have heard nothing since from the state government. They choose not to brief the federal MP for the area. My understanding from the Hastings Seafarers Club is that the surveyors have been in and looking at whether it can be done differently. One thing it would do is bring a lot of economic activity to our area. May I say, it will be an extraordinary eyesore. If you see pictures of it, a lot of people get upset about the ethane flare that's at the Esso Long Island Point site, which will look like a candle being dwarfed by a Rialto tower when the turbines are in place. But nevertheless, I check in regularly with the Western Port Biosphere folk to say, are you okay with this? Do you trust what they are doing? Will this have an enormous impact on what is an extremely precious part of the country? And they tell me they are satisfied with the discussions to date. So if they are happy, and I trust their judgment, let's see where it goes. But clearly, there had been no conversation between state Labor and federal Labor, because it's just a big fizzer.
So if you were to become government, how would you advance it? Because then you'd have the power. Just say,
But again,
let's accept your
it's not
thesis.
us. It's a
I
state
understand,
government
but
project.
do you think it's worth exploring in a different form?
Oh, if it stacks up environmentally, yes, right? If it does. But I'm not sure that it does in such a precious part of our state.
Yeah. Ben?
Yeah, I think for me, it's the kind of principle is we can't destroy nature to protect nature. And, you know, I'm a big believer in a fast-paced transition to renewables, and wind is going to be a significant part of the mix. And we would obviously love to create investment opportunities on the peninsula for jobs and local economy, etc. But I would agree, if it doesn't stack up environmentally, you know, we need to change the solution. I think we're pretty smart people, but I do wonder, continuing to invest or continuing to look at options that may well damage one of 5 UNESCO listed wetlands like this in the world. You know, I asked the question, is that the right move forward? So I don't have a position on that at this point in time, but I would say...
Sounds very similar to Zoe's position.
Yeah, look, I think we've got to be mature about this. You know, when we have an opportunity to invest significant funds in a really important part of infrastructure moving forward, we need to take a serious look at it. But you know, I would agree that we do need to look at the environmental effect statement when it does come forward.
Okay, Sarah?
Yeah, thank you. We can't separate talking about something like renewable energy from climate change, because we wouldn't be talking about renewable energy unless we were talking about climate change. There is no environment on a dead planet, right? But it doesn't mean that we can't do renewable energy and environment together, and that is something that the Western Port Biosphere and the Save Western Port Group are looking at how it works together. They're really keen to see the EES and make sure it stacks up environmentally. But we need these projects. We absolutely need to continue on the renewable energy transition, and to have Hastings as a key element of that is really exciting for our region because of the jobs it brings, because of the investment in education. I mean, this is incredible. It could open up the housing. Like, you know, if we work with the state government and look at the Port of Hastings land, and we look at releasing some of that land, then we can create an agglomeration of industries that supports the VRET, I think is the acronym for it. So that's really exciting. We could even get housing out of it. It could be a really great example of what the renewable energy transition looks like with housing, with people, local and local jobs is something that we're really keen for. More affordable housing, sustainable, all of those sort of things. It's an exciting project, but we really need to look at what the EES says.
Great. I want to move to the way businesses have been dealing with what has been a difficult economy over the last couple of years. They've obviously been struggling on a number of fronts, but struggling to attract workers, lots of reasons behind that, accommodation being a big one, of course. We've talked a little bit about housing. Transport is another reason for that, and that's fairly obvious. Wages, seasonal work opportunities. I wonder, are these some of the issues that business owners are raising with you when you're meeting with them? And what do you propose to do, Ben, first, to address them?
You know, I think, being a small business owner myself, I understand that, when the money's not coming in the door, it's really hard to pay the bills, whether that's increased rents from landlords in a really kind of difficult splits of shops that we have, and most of them are external, most of them are privately owned by individuals, so there's not sort of, Chatsworth shopping centre that we're dealing with here. And so I think there's a really interesting balance there. But primarily when I've been travelling around over the past few months and listening to small business owners, I've heard the words, things like, it's just so hard to do anything. And it's just so hard to get by. It's things like rental prices, obviously. It's things like power and energy bills, which both the government and the opposition have some ideas about. Some have been really well executed, others haven't. I'll leave you guys to determine whether you think that we're in a good spot right now. But the pressure on small business in particular, of which is the vast majority of businesses on the peninsula, employ 5 people or less. We're talking about tradies. We're talking about people who run their bookkeeping services from their home, or hairdressers. This is not, Downer or those sorts of organisations that we're talking about here. For me, one of the biggest things we can do is listen to small business and say, okay, let's go into bat. Let's change the energy mix. Let's make sure we're rolling out faster, cheaper energy for you. Let's make sure that we're providing support in there to make sure that things like that there might be opportunities for us to invest in new industrial relations reforms to make it simpler for small businesses to get through and to get employees where they need them. But I think the complexity of the systems that people are navigating are making it really challenging for people. The last thing I'll say is that things like insurance costs for small businesses, work cover premiums, etc. And I talked to a couple of hospitality organisations, businesses over the past couple of weeks that have found it just enormously difficult to stump up with tens of thousands of dollars for work cover premiums. And then when a claim might well be made, that the claim's not really sorting out the individual in the first place. And not getting them back to work as adequately or as the employee wants them to be. So there's so many little things there that we can help improve. But primarily, I think we need to listen to small business more than we do right now, and that way we can deliver more outcomes.
Zoe?
So we are very much a small business community. In 2021, there was about 15,800 small businesses. Now we're down to about 14,700. And they stretch right across the peninsula. The most significant group is in construction, which is why when we're talking about housing and building approvals, that's actually really important to our industry and whether people have thriving businesses down here. One thing I should point out, more than 27,000 small businesses have gone out of business since this government was elected. I can't tell you how many of them are here, but I can already tell you that there's a difference between the 21 and 23 figures, so we've probably lost about 1,000 down here. Why? What do I hear first? Cost of living. Those insurances Ben were talking about gone up 35% since this government was elected. And then what I hear is tax, 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 tax. We pay payroll tax as though we're in metropolitan Melbourne, as though we're in the CBD, and we pay excruciating land tax. Most land tax prices have gone up by about 50% down here. So it's tax and then it's red tape. I was just talking to Russell Joseph, who's trying to set up a community housing organisation, taking me through all the hoops and jumps he's had to go through just to actually try and set up a not-for-profit business in delivering community housing on the peninsula. So there are various things that we've put on the table, including lifting the instant asset write-off up to $30,000 immediately to help small business get ahead. But it is absolutely essential that small business initiatives target what we do here, because without small business, this community will be less prosperous and a less wonderful place to live.
Sarah.
Yeah, thank you. So small businesses are the heartbeat of the Mornington Peninsula. I think 95% of our businesses are small businesses. Now, the federal government has just released a national small business strategy, which they work with all the state governments to deliver, and that is about cutting red tape and increasing the ability to get finance for businesses. I think now, not across all the details, but I have been reading it, and that is a really exciting step forward for small businesses, because that is something I do hear from them, is that their regulation and red tape is really, really difficult for them, particularly when you are in a small business, and if there's only 2, 3 or 4 of you, keeping a handle on all of the regulatory environment that you operate is really difficult. I also, when we talk about small businesses, they're not all the same, right? Like, for example, I was at a Mornington Peninsula Regional Tourism Board thing the other day, and they were talking about summer on the Mornington Peninsula. Now, marine businesses have had a great summer. Everybody's out on the water. They're going on Polperro dolphin tours. They're hiring SUPs. They're on boats. They're having a great time. The ice cream stores, packed. Great. So they've had a great summer, but other businesses have struggled because people are not necessarily wanting to be indoors, or they can't necessarily afford as much as they had, so they haven't had as much. But I think if we listen to small businesses and address their needs, we can definitely support them. And I think the National Small Business Strategy is a good start. But if we get back to housing, the Housing Australian Future Fund, which is a key piece of the Albanese Labor government, $32 billion into housing from the government, but the HAF fund, I'll go to acronyms, has delivered key worker housing to other areas around Australia. Now, we have to get smarter about how we get that funding onto the Mornington Peninsula. How do we work with housing providers to get that key worker accommodation so we can have people working in aged care and we can have tourism workers as well? It's really important that we do that.
Okay, that's interesting. Now, I want to just talk about the number one issue that was raised in the other seat of Dunkley. I imagine, I'm just going to get consensus and not go around the whole, but is cost of living the number one that's getting raised with all of you consistently? Cost of living? Is it the number one issue?
Well, on the doors, yeah, it is a big issue for the Mornington Peninsula, but on the doors, people are talking about different issues. I've been on the doors for 3 weeks now, and it depends where you live what your main issue is.
Okay.
But overall, I think there is a cost of living.
Right. So a broad consensus, although of course for some people I imagine they do raise all sorts of things. So getting to that, and I'll start with you, Zoe, since Sarah's looking at me like, where do I take this microphone? I do love the microphone acrobatics. This week we might see an interest rate cut. Well, yeah, a lot of people hope so, right? But does it indicate to you, yes, it's been a tough couple of years, but inflation has clearly been high around the world as well, that we might be on a positive trajectory for the economy, which of course will help households and small businesses?
Look, we can only hope. It's been 12 interest rate rises under this government. So if one goes in the opposite direction on Tuesday, it will be a godsend, but it will be a marginal benefit. The average Australian mortgage now costs $26,000 more a year in interest payments alone. Down here, it is more like $50,000 because of the value of land. You have to come up with $50,000 extra in after-tax money just to feed the interest on your mortgage. About 80% of our businesses are backed by their small businesses are backed by their home mortgage, right? So it's putting enormous pressure throughout our peninsula community, not just households, but also businesses. So let us hope that it is a step in the right direction. We have been in a GDP per capita recession for multiple quarters now. There is no prospect of that changing. I heard my friend Jodie before mention rising employment. Yes, but 82% of that employment is in the public sector. This is a make-believe recovery. And anyone who's in business knows that. So yes, I desperately hope that there is a interest rate decrease on Tuesday, but I would not say nirvana is nigh.
Sarah?
Yeah, thank you. Look, the Albanese government has been doing its best to deliver cost of living relief to people. Right now, we've delivered cheaper medicines, more bulk billing. There's things like free TAFE, the HEX debt reduction have all been, important for families. The tax cut that was delivered just before the by-election was incredible because it hit more people. If it had kept it the same one, it wouldn't have given tax relief to lower income earners. So that was a really special thing to ensure that all taxpayers got a tax cut. But there's always room to do more. Better never stops. So you have to re-elect the Albanese government to get more cost of living relief because I think it equates to, and I know people are really feeling it. So even with the implementation, even with the things that have been put on place, people are still struggling. But if the Liberal government had stayed in government, the average worker would have been about $5,500 worth off. So imagine that, $5,500 worth off, plus all of the pain that we're feeling, like the pain that people are feeling now. So it's important that we recognise that, but we've got to keep working harder for the Australian people.
Ben?
I've seen it on the ground. At the Community Support Centre in 6 months to December, we had it was close to 50% increase in demand for food relief. So when we talk about cost of living and inflation, I see it on the ground. People who are literally coming in and saying, I have no idea how I'm going to afford the $100 a week rent increase that's coming to my doorstep in 6 weeks' time. I am going to be homeless. The people that are coming into our centre saying, I have never sought support before. Young families, single pensioners, people who are living on their own and looking after kids. These are us, right? You're all experiencing it. And I am sick to death of having a he said, she said conversation. A two-way thing saying they did it wrong, we could have done it better, we're doing it really well, it would have been worse under them. I don't know about you, but that conversation is really tiring me, and it's certainly tiring the people that I speak to in the streets. Now, I know that that's our system and that's the way we've done things over a point of time, and there's probably some truth in most of those conversations. But I'm convinced by the people that I speak to in the shopping centres, in the pubs, in the community support centres that I've worked in, that people need a different solution. They are sick of the same old thing, and that's what I'm just so passionate about. If you can't hear it right now in my voice. But we need a different way, and relying on community centres, relying on food banks, relying on churches and other community groups to support our communities is great because it does create fabric in our communities that is just incredible for the long term. But we can do that in a way that's more joyful, perhaps, rather than when it's absolute rock bottom crisis time. So I'd love to see whatever we need to do. Obviously, we've talked about many things in terms of duopolies and cost of living pressures on groceries and so forth. But there is just not enough being done by the major two parties right now who, we talk about energy relief and grocery bill relief. Guess who some of the major funders are to these to the major parties? Energy companies, the Coles and Woolies of our world. It's like, we're not going to get significant reform until significant change happens in our system.
Okay. So I've got a question I'm going to put to all of you, but a different version to you, Ben. So I'm going to bring the mic over to Zoe, but it's a similar question to what I asked in the other candidate conversation we had, which is, your leader is Peter Dutton, of course yours Anthony Albanese, and we'll get to your thoughts, which I'll trick up in a question in a moment for you, Ben. But Zoe, what are the attributes that you most admire about, why do you think Peter Dutton deserves to be Prime Minister?
So I've known Peter for about 20 years. I think he actually had hair when I first met him, when he came into the Parliament a long time ago. It was interesting, when he came down here a couple of summers ago, we did a number of roundtables. He went out to Long Island Point. He did a beautiful roundtable with the Committee for Mornington Peninsula. And the feedback I got after that was, geez, he's such a nice bloke. I thought he'd be terrible. And I said, why? And they said, the stuff I saw on the telly. And, it's the grey out stuff and the dramatic music that, sounds like it's from Star Wars behind him. Peter is a very genuine human. What you see is what you get. He's quite funny. He's quite self-deprecating. But he has an extraordinary sense of responsibility and an extraordinary willingness to make some really difficult decisions. I have been astounded watching him go out on a limb, whether it be on gambling, advertising reform, social media bans for under 16, The Voice, nuclear, demanding mandatory sentencing in relation to hate crimes. There's barely been a sitting fortnight when, frankly, Peter Dutton wasn't setting the agenda, and that is a remarkable thing in opposition. If I may say, Anthony Albanese makes it easy, because despite the fact that the bloke's been in the parliament for 26 years and done nothing but politics his entire professional life, he seems to have got to the job and not really know what to do with it, which is a tragedy for this country. But Peter has very strong vision, and one that he's gone out and put out there. Going out there and explaining what he would do in terms of nuclear energy takes a lot of courage. And he has led from the front the whole way through. But behind that sits a decent man, a funny man, and a good man. Those of you who've met him in this room would probably agree, and I look forward to more of you meeting him in due course.
Jodie? Sorry. It's true. Do you only pre-select people with curly hair in the Labor Party? That's the story. Please, Sarah.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. I've actually only met Anthony Albanese 3 times. Twice was shaking his hand in Canberra, and once was at Jodie's launch. And he's a very nice guy. He posed for the photos. So, you know, but I actually want to say it's more about the team than Anthony brings around. He's a team captain, and we're team players. I think that's what it is about being in a party. We are team players. We work together to get things done. And that's where our strength lies, in belonging to parties. It's that teamwork and that vision and that unified voice. I have to say, I've been a member of the Labor Party for probably just over 2 years, and it was the women in the Labor Party that really got me over the line. I had an amazing time meeting Peter Murphy, incredible woman, spent half an hour with her. She convinced me to run, but then I met Katie Gallagher, Melandiri McCarthy, I met Jess, I met Jodie. Well, Jodie and I have known each other since before politics. Christian McBain and I have a really good relationship because of local government, and it's those women and the team that Anthony Albanese has created, and bringing women's voices up. Like, it's an incredible female representation at the cabinet level now. And that is a party that I wanted to belong to, because it emboldens people to have their voice and to have their say. And I think that is what Anthony Albanese is about. He's also great with music, and I'm a music lover, so that,
Okay, DJ Elbow, that's a good reason. Anyone who pretends to be a DJ is someone I can respect, Ben. If this is how I'll pose it for you. You don't have a party leader, you're an independent, right? That's your whole thing. But of course, if it's going to be a hung parliament, which all of the polls are suggesting might be the case, you manage to win this electorate. Who will you negotiate with, and what are the characteristics that you like about either leader that might sway you?
Wouldn't that be a really great outcome?
Well, no, I don't comment on the outcome. These people all get a vote around here.
To have...
But you would be happy, I imagine.
Look, I think absolutely. You know, for me, I'm not doing this as an independent because I didn't get into one of the other major parties. I think there are significant downfalls to the party system that don't represent local communities. And so that's kind of the first point that led me into wanting to be an independent in the first place. But for a hung parliament, right now, I haven't seen it. I'm already practicing to be a politician.
I'm going to return you to the question.
I haven't seen enough from either of the major parties right now to show what they're going to do down on the peninsula. Beside a couple of great announcements so far, that's not enough for me to say, yeah, great, I'm going to throw my weight behind that party. It's just not enough, because I think
so. You don't. But in terms of characteristics of these candidates, you don't find either of them appealing.
Look, I think willingness to. I've talked to characteristics because for me it doesn't matter who it is. It's characteristics, things like willingness to collaborate, willingness to compromise, willingness to negotiate. And I think for me, that's what's going to deliver outcomes for our community. There's no point me backing one of the other leaders if they're just going to say, look, you've got to toe our line, mate. Like, that's not going to work. And so if one of the leaders chooses to do that and says, no, you're going to be one of those other people on the crossbench that we're not going to talk to, I won't be supporting them.
Okay. All right. So here we come to our Slido questions, and I know you've all been thinking, get to my question, please, and I will. Being a three-cornered discussion, three sections, it's been more voices, so let's do this as efficiently as we can, just to make sure that we give some time, respect to everyone's questions. This is really a very pertinent one for your electorate, starting with you, Zoe. Rosebud Hospital is falling apart, says this person, and is at risk of closing. How can we address it?
Yeah, Rosebud Hospital needs a lot of love. So at the November 22 state election, Sam Groth, who's now the member for Nepean, again in what was then the most marginally held Labor seat in the state government, proposed $340 million to rebuild that hospital. I'm afraid to say, because it is a state hospital, that infrastructure funding has to come from the state government. I have tried with Mark Butler, I have tried with Catherine King, and I have tried with
You mean the federal government, sorry?
No, it has to come from the state government. It's a state hospital, so it has to come from the state government. So I have tried to persuade everyone.
Right. And you're saying that he made a commitment but hasn't honoured it?
340? No, he didn't get elected, unfortunately. We still have a Labor government. So the other side, by the way, which put in billions of dollars into regional hospitals, did not put a cent into Rosebud. So at Rosebud, we're still living with 1980s infrastructure, and therefore at the moment, most ambulances just keep going, whether that's up to Frankston or indeed beyond to the CBD. We are desperate for investment in Rosebud Hospital. As I said, the federal sphere can't do it. We can do bits and pieces like comprehensive cancer care, allied care, the National Centre for Ageing that was being discussed about by Jodie and Nathan. That was a coalition investment, and we did the clinical trials hub in Rosebud. But the bricks and mortar of what is a state government hospital, unfortunately, must be done by a state government. As I said, Sam put 340 on the table. It was never matched by Labor. Got a couple of Labor MPs here, you can bid yourself into the game here, to hopefully get this government, or if not, an elected Batten government to back that in.
Okay.
Oh, me. So Rosebud Hospital is very dear to people on the Southern Peninsula. People were born in that hospital, and their parents will still talk about it. It's a community hospital. It's beautiful. I have been there. My two children have been there. My husband has been there. So we've used this facilities. And not that long ago, December, my son had COVID and ear infection at the same time, awful. So we were there overnight. So I understand the importance of that hospital. It is a state hospital.
Yes.
So I can't necessarily commit to funding for it, but I do know we need health services that meet the community's needs on the Southern Peninsula. If I get elected, I will be advocating strongly to Mark Butler to get an urgent care clinic on the Southern Peninsula, because that will relieve some of the pressure on Rosebud Hospital, and then relieve some of the funding that can then go back into the Rosebud Hospital as well. But I'm also advocating quite strongly to my Labor colleagues about Tom McIntosh does not stop hearing from me about Rosebud Hospital and about the need for services on the Mornington Peninsula. So that's what I can do as a federal politician, is advocate to the state politicians about our services that we need on the Mornington Peninsula.
And I've got to say, this is an overwhelming question that's coming through. So yeah, it won't surprise anyone in this room, but just to reflect what's happening on Slido.
Yeah, I was meeting with Sue Gilbert the other day, is running, or part of the team running the Save the Hospital campaign, and along with the Shire have done an incredible amount of advocacy around this as well. And I think for me, are we okay with just saying state government problem? This is going to cost 350, 400, probably 500 million by the time it's all said and done. I guess for me, there needs to be a level of responsibility at the federal level to say, look, okay, that's how it's done in the past. Why does it need to continue to be that way? Of course, there's a state government responsibility. We all know that.
So what do you suggest the federal government does?
Well, I think we need to create some new opportunities to say, okay, let's challenge the current system that says, all right, state government hospital, state government problem, and let's continue putting pressure. We can do that, of course we can, but they can continue to ignore that too. We all know the position that the state government's in terms of its finances. So I think we can continue to kick that can down the road with the current solutions, and all the while see the dilapidation of the resource that we have there and the absolute incompetent sort of systems that we have on the Southern Peninsula. People used to be born there, that's right, but there's no maternity ward there now. Pre-COVID, there were 2 theatres for day surgeries. They're gone now. They're closed. You know, they had to raise $1 million from in the community just to get a CT scanner to reopen the emergency department. Like, this is stuff that's a no-brainer. Like, we've got 170,000 people who live on the peninsula and another 8 million who visit us. Is one hospital enough? No way. You know, we've got some incredible services up at the base, which are just growing, and that's just incredible to see. But we need a public hospital that is absolutely operational, and we need it bloody fast. Like, it's the conditions there. I don't have to convince anybody. It is woeful, and it is an absolute stain on the public service that we have down here.
What are your thoughts, and I'll put this to Zoe, on the Mornington Peninsula entering into a designated area migration agreement with the Shire?
Yep. Can I just add to Ben's excellent pleas about the hospital? The difference between an independent and people who represent parties of government, and may I say I deeply respect Sarah for putting her hand up for the Labor Party. She was deeply involved in teal campaigns before now at both federal and state level. She's joined a party of government, people who have to make hard decisions. Every day when you are in government, you must sit down and assess different priorities, and those decisions are hard. I have sat down in the Education Department, I have sat down in the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, I have sat down in the Department of Communications and gone through every single line of funding to try and work out where you can make savings. These are not jobs you envy for anyone. They are hard, hard jobs. That is the nature of people who are in parties of government, that we understand that it is about compromise and reaching the best possible outcome to secure the prosperity and the safety of the nation. So no one's kicking it down the can, Ben, when I say Rosebud Hospital desperately needs money and I say it to left and right. They are just reflecting the fact that if they say we're doing public hospitals now, they'll have a request for $700 billion worth of investment tomorrow, because frankly, the state has not invested properly across the hospital system. So it's just a fact of life that once you say, well, the Fed's going to, well, there's the Constitution, which is always worth a read, but nevertheless, there are always difficult decisions to be made, right? And that's why you send grown-ups with good skills to Parliament who can actually sit there and do that difficult, unenviable work. Sorry, Pat, go back to the question.
What did I ask you? Didn't I follow up there?
Oh, Dharma, yeah, designated area migration agreement. Sorry, now we're down the barrel of immigration law. So for those who don't know, a designated area migration agreement is one where you basically make it a streamlined process for getting skilled workers into a particular area.
You
so
give
when
it special status, essentially.
Special status, and it's just faster. And so when I first got elected, I raised this as a possibility, and I sat down with Andrew Giles and had a long chat with him about it. And he said, mate, your Shire has got to ask for it. So I came and spoke to the Shire and said, Shire, we've got to ask for this. And I actually think I took councillors to meet with various people. We collaborated with the Shire of the Yarra Valley, trying to get a designated area migration agreement, because we have quite a lot of similarities in terms of agricultural work and tourism work. And again, I'm sorry, but the Shire just didn't pick up the ball, right? It would have made it much easier to get skilled workers. I've got a number of people in this room who have begged for help in relation to getting chefs in from overseas, but it's much easier, frankly, if you want to go and work in Warrnambool, because they've got a designated area migration agreement, or South Australia, which is an entire region of itself for a designated area migration agreement. But I can't bring a horse to water, even though I brought them to the people they're meant to negotiate with to set one up. So we missed that boat. It's not a boat that you can't pick up again. Of course you can. But in terms of everyone working together, the Shire had an opportunity there and they didn't take it up. So subsequently, I'm sorry for those of you who are still struggling with immigration papers, but the battle goes on.
Yeah, thank you. I think on the Mornington Peninsula we have it's a very complex environment, and you've probably got that today. Okay.
I picked that up.
Yeah, you picked that up. So that could be one solution to to the housing crisis, not housing crisis, the worker shortage that we experience on the Mornington Peninsula. But we can't separate that from the housing issue that we have on the Mornington Peninsula, because we do not have enough housing for key workers. And then when I was talking about this before, about this Housing Australia Future Fund, I think that is something where we could look. If we can get key worker houses, we could probably get more people from within the country to come and work on the Mornington Peninsula. I know it's to do with tourism and agriculture jobs, in particular, is where we're experiencing shortages. So maybe the Dharma agreement, sorry, it's probably an extra A, I didn't need to use it, but maybe the Dharma would be the best way for that. But we must make sure that we have the houses to make sure that we could, to have the workers here, definitely. So it's one solution, but it's multi-pronged.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's clearly an idea that's worth pursuing. When we do have businesses calling out for workers, I think the fact that many of the people that I've spoken to so far, whether it's small businesses or large businesses or just genuine community, they are frustrated with being caught between regional and metro. They're frustrated with all of those variations of challenges, whether it be payroll tax and land tax and those sorts of things, or whether it be other matters around investment in things like airports or public infrastructure. I think there's significant work that we need to do there, but yeah, okay. I think it's
So we're going to call this next section a rapid round. You're going to give very brief answers just to get to a couple of questions. Not that you've done a great job. No criticism. I think you have been succinct, but just a couple of questions before we say goodbye, which would be sad. I've enjoyed your company, but all good things must end, right? Okay, so here it is. Rapid round, beginning with you. You've got the mic. Yep, you're holding the mic. You're entitled to it right now. What plans do you have to improve public transport across Frankston and the Mornington Peninsula?
Well, I think, again, significant partnerships between federal and state government to improve those services. Again, pressure from the crossbench to bring about more negotiation power than we do right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I think one thing that I'd really like to advocate for is the full business case for the Stony Point uplift. I think that would be a really great decision to get 20 to 30-minute services on the Stony Point line. That would improve for Hastings and Somerville. It would probably give them an extra service, I think, maybe. And that would really encourage investment there. Also, I'd like to partner with the state government more on their bus initiative, because I think buses are a really great option for the Mornington Peninsula.
Is this working? No.
Press the bottom bit. Just take that.
Right. So, as Nathan has explained a little while ago, there was a commitment of $900 million from Dutton at the Dunkley by-election to actually start the work on getting that Baxter line done, get the electrification. It's the only part of the Metropolitan Rail section that still is dooky little single line diesel engine thing. So there was $900 million on the table, and what I'm really glad to see is that already there are constructive conversations happening between Peter Dutton and his team, and indeed the state opposition in the event that there's a change of government in 2 years' time, because yes, it's going to take both sides of government to get it done.
Okay, keep holding the mic. We clearly have a skills shortage in the peninsula. What are the candidates' solutions to solve this?
So the designated area migration agreement that we discussed before would be the main one. But the main thing for me is we've got to keep our young people here. We tend to lose them after school. We do know the only tertiary footprint we have down here at the moment is the Rosebud TAFE, which is a fantastic campus, but just deeply unloved. In terms of school enrolments in proper qualifications there, they've gone down from 133 to 91 this year, which means everything's going backwards. Fee-free TAFE, great idea, but already we've got less TAFE students than we had 2 years ago in the system. We must encourage kids to stay on the peninsula. They can live at home, hopefully. If they had better buses, thank you, state government, then they could actually get to the TAFE, which would be a really good start. We must encourage TAFE, sort of vocational skills down here in particular. We don't have a university. We've got one in Frankston. But the longer we can keep people down here, the more they can fill the jobs we have locally and grow with the peninsula.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Probably similar to Zoe, we definitely need investment in TAFE, like Rosebud TAFE. That would be great. I think the free TAFE programs are really good because they contribute to the renewable energy transition, to the housing. You know, if we get workers that can go in housing and renewable energy transition, they're employed for life, right? That's really good. And with the VREC coming on board, I can see sorry, Josh, pointing at you. I can see that as being a good impetus for us to encourage even more skills. So, and yeah, obviously public transport, housing, all very important to address those issues.
Yeah, for me, it's housing. You know, everywhere I go, everywhere I speak to, particularly on the southern peninsula and up in the hinterland, it's the lack of housing that's providing the lack of workers, and then there's obviously skill shortages that fall into that because they're seeking employment in other areas. So building our supply in affordable and social housing is critical.
Okay, and holding the mic still, final question before I get to my final question. So final Slido question, I should really name it properly. Small business it's a good question here from Simon. Hello, Simon. Which federal taxes would each candidate remove to help small business thrive? What specific policy would you propose for small business?
Look, I think for me, it comes back to incentives, less so removing taxes. I think looking at making sure that people can afford their energy, can afford their rent, looking at opportunities to invest in small business. We employ one staff member in our business. So for me, personally, it's a really difficult question in terms of removing taxes. But for us, it's making sure that we can survive. We can get through the get through the seasons that we have down here, surviving the winters, and that'd be my point.
Sarah?
Yeah, thank you. And I'm actually not across all the small business taxes there are, but I would like to refer back to the National Business Strategy that the federal government has just launched. And I think the cutting of red tape is really important to businesses. So that increases, productivity and actually finances that you have in your business. And increasing finances options to businesses is really important. So they're the things that I'd like to promote. And if I do get elected, I'd love to have the Small Business Minister down here so I could actually talk about the National Business Strategy to our small businesses on the Mornington Peninsula.
Look, in terms of small business, the thing I hear most in terms of what the federal government can control is actually industrial relations. There have been so many changes to casuals, changes to the rules in relation to paid casual leave, and the expectation of a pattern bargaining arrangement coming down the peninsula at some point in time. So when I speak to small business here and I say, do you understand what's changed in the landscape of industrial relations? Normally my interlocutor goes white. So it's not so much small business tax. We have tried as a side of government to reduce small business tax over and over again, and there's a thing called the Senate that won't let it happen. That's fine, it is what it is. So we have to make life as easy as possible for small business, and one of the key things I hear there are things obviously like the tax offset, which we'd uplift from 20 to 30, but industrial relations is such a blocker on growth and flexibility. So whether that's changes to casuals, the right to disconnect, basically people can't understand what they're meant to do now and are terribly frightened they're getting it wrong, and probably are.
Final section. What's your final pitch? Zoe, you've still got the microphone.
Yeah, sure. All right, so today is the 1,000-day birthday of the Albanese Labor government, and everyone in this room needs to ask themselves, are they better off than where they were? I suspect the answer is no. We are in a GDP recession. People are paying somewhere between $26,000 and $50,000 more just for their mortgage repayments in this part of the country. At every turn, we have seen false promises. Everyone says, oh, cost of living relief, my foot. Free TAFE isn't free. There's a little note in that legislation that it might not be at a TAFE and it might not actually be free. We've got an amazing private RTO in this room who's gone bankrupt because she was actually providing subsidised courses in exactly what we need. Disability services, aged care, tourism, hospitality. It was subsidised by the state government, but they took the money off her. She was charging students less than it cost to go to the TAFE. Why? Because TAFE imposes really high materials fees. Free TAFE, my foot. Right? And if you look at every single cost of living initiative this government's put on the table, they are just as transparent and failing to succeed. You need a stronger government that will manage the Australian economy. We have been very clear and very courageous in relation to what we've put on the table for energy in particular, but small business secondly, to bring down the cost. The average inflation under the coalition was 2.2 and under these guys 4.4. Everyone says, oh, it wasn't our fault. Yes, it is your fault. You've put $350 billion of extra spending into the Australian economy, and you've put 36 additional public servants into Canberra. There are things that did not need to be done, and there was spending that did not need to be made that has actually made this economy pump primed and inflation the thing that continues to keep interest rates high here. You need a better government. You will get one in Peter Dutton, and you don't get that unless I stay in this seat and more seats like Dunkley go to the Liberal Party. Thank you.
Sarah.
For 40 years, we've had a Liberal hold the seat of Flinders, and it's time for a change. I reckon we haven't got our fair share, we haven't got what we deserve, and we haven't seen the investment in infrastructure that we need. So we need change, and we need to vote for Sarah Race, because I will be better for our peninsula. My promise to you is that I will work hard every single day, as I have done, whether I've been volunteering on the Rye Kinder Committee as Kinder President, or whether I've been your local councillor, or whether I've been on your footy committee. I'm here for you, I'm here for the people of the peninsula, and community is absolutely at the heart of what I do, and it drives me every single day. I hear people because I live here on the peninsula all the time. I'm at the school gate picking up my kids. I'm at the supermarket, and that's a 2-hour trip for me. So I'm here every day. The Albanese Labor government have been mopping up Morrison's mess for the past 3 years, and we do not want Peter Dutton in here back in Australia derailing the process that the Albanese government has taken. Nuclear energy. Oh, where do I start with that? So I'm not going to at the moment, Australia is sitting on what we could almost call a gold rush. We could be a renewable energy superpower. Pivoting to nuclear now is like going to go and mine iron varieties, commonly called fool's gold. It is a fool's errand to go after nuclear now. We're just so far down the renewable energy transition, and nuclear is going to be slow to build, it's going to cost more, and it's not going to meet our energy needs that we need, and it's not going to help us decarbonise our economy. So that is a fool's gold, and we do not want to go down that way. It's also, Peter Dutton's talked about cuts to the public service and cuts to government, but he's not releasing those cuts until after he gets into government. We know what happened last time. There were cuts to essential services, like to Medicare, to the people in the Medicare office. Those people have been brought back. That's where the public servants have been brought back into. So that's what we need. An Albanese government needs to keep on that way. A Labor government is the only party of reform. Labor government has delivered the Medicare, it's delivered superannuation, it's delivered the NDIS, it has delivered full funding to public schools. Only a Labor government will do that, and only a party, only having me as having a seat at the table will be able to deliver that for the peninsula.
Thanks, Sarah. Ben?
I think for me it comes down to looking at our past. This electorate has been safe at the federal level for a long, long time. And what we're seeing right now is the outcome of that. Poor roads, poor hospitals, poor schools, poor infrastructure, poor public transport, poor management of the environment. We are seeing the same thing that we've always seen because we're electing the same people. It doesn't matter whether it's the Liberal Party or the Labor Party in government. It hasn't seemed to matter who is in government for us down here, or whether it's a sitting MP or in opposition. Nothing has changed. And so it's time to shift the perspective, to create a new system where we can hold people to account. We can build pressure. We've seen what the independents have done in other seats around the country, and it's been remarkable just how fast we've been able to produce things like transition to renewables, things like pulling the government into account on things like donations reform and so forth. It is time to elect people in our local areas who serve our local communities, not the parties which tell them how to vote. We do not have the reins right now. It's time to take them back.
Okay. Please, a very loud round of applause for all three candidates. Now, that brings us to the conclusion, but just a little sum up from me. I mean, it was incredible to see what I consider, I watch politics very closely, and we often focus on the divisions among candidates, but what I see here, which gives me great hope for our country actually, is a camaraderie around the candidates and mutual respect for the work that they've all done, which I think is really important, because it's very hard to put yourself out as a candidate and to build your country and to care about your country rather than just pull everyone down. So I think that's excellent. But a competitive field, which I think is healthy for democracy. And, whatever you make of whatever candidate or what you've heard, competition is healthy for politics, so is participation. So thank you to everyone for coming, and for the candidates who have been polite to each other. And I think I'm going to spend some time in Flinders too, mainly because I like it around here, but also you guys, sure. I also just want to thank everyone who's come to this lunch. You've been a really excellent audience, a lot of listening for a few hours, and I haven't really seen a lot of kind of dysfunctional behaviour. You're excellent people, you've all just been listening and you're really into your community, and for that I say thank you. I just want to thank a couple of the committee's key members: Australian Unity, Bayport, BlueScope, ESSO, Frankston RSL, Zola Farms, McPherson Kelly, Melbourne Racing Club, Peninsula Hot Springs, one of my favourite places. Oh no, you're not meant to say you have a favourite, are you? But it is. Ritchie's, Sea Road Ferries, the National, Chisholm Institute, Frankston City Council, Monash University, Mornington Peninsula Shire Council, Peninsula Health, Port of Hastings and South East Water. Thank you to everyone who's participated. I just think this region, and I'm not just saying because I'm a suck, but is my favourite. If property prices weren't so high, I'd definitely be investing, guys, but they're all promising to work on that, so perhaps I'll join you after that's resolved. Thank you very much.